IB Nation, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Wednesday. Happy almost Turkey Day. I know if you guys are anything like me, looking forward to getting to chow down on some pretty good food here in the next 24 hours. But before we get there, folks, we have a loaded show coming your way. As you guys know, some news just broke. Amari Irvin, 2027 linebacker from IMG Academy, just committed to the University of Notre Dame. So we are going to cover that. And then we're going to dive into kind of like our normal Thursday show, but obviously it gets pushed back with Thanksgiving being tomorrow. So we're going to be talking about our game predictions for Notre Dame Stanford. We're going to give our score predictions, how we see it playing out, game wreckers, anything that we might be concerned with. And then we're going to dive into Notre Dame's rooting guide. It's rivalry weekend, and there's going to be a lot of different games that are going to impact Notre Dame positively or negatively. And then we have about 3 games that we're going to preview for this upcoming weekend. We're going to talk about Friday's games. And then on Friday, Vince and Brian are going to go live and talk about some of the games that will be happening on Saturday. So it is a holiday week, but still a lot of Irish Breakdown content coming your way. But Brian, let's get this all started and kicked off by the commitment 2027 linebacker Amari Evans from IMG Academy.
Yeah, this is one that's kind of been floating around for a while. There was a chance that, Trev, you and I discussed this potential commitment. Trying to remember, I'm pulling his profile up. He visited for a game, and for the life of me, I'm forgetting what game it was. It was the October 11th game. What that'd be? Was that USC? I thought it was the NC State game. So he visits for the NC State game. And we talked about at the time, we thought there was a chance that he was going to commit then. And so we've already done like prep work on an Amari Irvin breakdown back then, and he ended up not committing, letting the process play out a little bit, and has decided to commit to Notre Dame now. And this gives them a second linebacker in the class. So a very interesting situation. He's the younger brother of Cedric Irvin Jr., which means he's also the son of Cedric Irvin, the former stud running back for Michigan State, who's played against Notre Dame. Well, if you guys remember the story with Cedric Jr., he committed to Notre Dame and then basically had his commitment revoked by Notre Dame when the new staff came along. It was a very unfortunate situation. Sean Davis and I talked about it at the time. We didn't love that decision by Notre Dame. We understood it because the staff that was now hired did not recruit Cedric Jr. They were honest with him and said, hey, you're not going to play here. And it ended up working out for both. Cedric's going to get a degree from Stanford, and Notre Dame went on and got Jeremiah Love. So it kind of worked out for both people. But I was shocked, honestly, that that Amari was going to kind of have the interest in that, because I know his dad wasn't happy about what happened with Cedric Jr. But it sounds like some menses have been mended, and some bridges have been repaired, and now Amari Irvin's in the class. And I think it also is an example of, good parenting involves allowing your children to make what they think is the best decision for them. And certainly the Irvin family is allowing Amari to do that. So I think it's a cool backstory, to be honest with you. It's not often that you have a situation like that come up. And I think it says a lot about the Irvin family. It also says a lot about Notre Dame and the kind of relationships they've been able to build, with that family since all that kind of went down. So good pickup for Notre Dame. We'll dive into what it all means, but I just felt it was kind of interesting to discuss that little part of the backstory before things, went too far. But I just think it's another example, Trevor, of just Notre Dame remains just a really hot program. This is a kid that's been to Notre Dame a couple times. He also visited in the summer, came here in June for a visit. June for one of the, during the camp season, came back for a game, and Notre Dame has been able to really get this one done. He has one of the more impressive offer lists you're going to find. A lot of the IMG kids do, but I was kind of like writing out as I was writing the article, the commitment article earlier today. I'm writing it, and I'm like listing all the schools that he's been offered by, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to say, and many others. It was like, I can't write all these schools out. He's got offers from Ohio State, Miami, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Oregon, USC, Penn State, Texas A&M, LSU, Oklahoma, Florida, Florida State, Michigan, Tennessee, Auburn, Ole Miss, Missouri, Louisville, Nebraska, Arkansas, SMU, Indiana, Kansas State, among many, many, many others. So this is a kid that was certainly in high regard, and he's a good football player. And so Notre Dame was able to get it done and add him to the class. So it is interesting. I mean, look, we were going to talk about in the evaluation period, but let's just kind of get this out of the way now. Second linebacker in the class. So we're going to do a little bit of a moving around of our normal angle, because I want to get this out of the way now, because this is talked about a lot when people mention it. This is the second linebacker in the class. Obviously, Amari joins Ellis McGaskin, who is committed to Notre Dame from Alabama. Ellis is listed at 6'1", about 215. Amari is listed either 5'11" or 6 foot, depending on who you talk to. And these guys don't exactly fit the typical prototype of what Notre Dame has recruited a linebacker over the years. Normally, they recruit the 6'2 plus, really long, rangy guys. Ellis is pretty long, even though he's not tall. Amari's got good length, but he doesn't have like the kind of a length that you would normally think would overcome it. So, I mean, that is an interesting thing in this 27 class. We're seeing a different type of linebacker, a smaller linebacker. Now, Amari has some thickness to him. He's already 215, 220. He's going to be 230 plus when it's all said and done, which can be taken one of two ways. One is, why are they going against the profile? The second question is, well, clearly they think these guys are really good and they're not going to turn away really good players because they don't fit a profile. Like, there's two ways this conversation can go, Trevor, when you're evaluating these type of players. Is one is, why are they recruiting short linebackers? I thought we were done with that. Well, yeah, but the short linebackers they were recruiting in the past were like Drew Whites and Joe Schmitz and guys that weren't elite prospects. J.D. Bertrand, who ended up becoming a big-time prospect. Jack Kaiser, who became a big-time prospect. So the last two short linebackers that Notre Dame signed both got drafted and were 3-year starters at Notre Dame. So, and are playing in the NFL right now. So I think the reality is you have a profile of what you're looking for. We want length, we want this, we want that. But at the end of the day, you have to be willing to say, yeah, this guy doesn't fit that profile, but this kid has all the other traits we look for. Mike Mickens loves long defensive backs, but he also took Nick Reddish last year, in 26 was 5'11". He took Khalil Terry this year, right? Like, well, why did he go against the grain for those players? Adon Schuler does not fit the normal profile for what Mike Mickens looks for. He's 5'11", 6 feet tall, but he's a heck of a football player. So you have to be willing to kind of go away from the profile. Mark Zachary doesn't fit the profile of what what Mike Mickens is looking for, which is the 6'1" plus corners. But you get to the point in time where the kid's too good to pass up. And I think that's what the staff feels about Amari and Ellis is, yeah, they don't fit the profile, but they're really talented football players. And we'd love to have them. And I think with Amari, there's the added bonus of you're getting a kid from IMG. So you finally get yourself a foothold in that school. I don't think recruiting IMG is as important as maybe some people do, but it doesn't hurt if there's the right kid. You have to be real careful with IMG kids. You have to be real careful that you're getting the right type of player. Because a lot of those IMG kids, that's where I'm just going to say it as bluntly as I can. They're kind of mercenary prospects, some of them, where they're just kind of, I'm going there and I'm going to, I'm looking for the right dollar amount and the right not all of them. So you got to be careful. And clearly Notre Dame has done their due diligence. They've been recruiting Amari for a year, and they know the family very well from recruiting Cedric. So clearly there was a feeling that, hey, this kid fits the profile of what we're looking for off the field. He fits a lot of the things we look for on the field: instincts, athleticism, toughness, smarts, all that. He just lacks this over here. So all these things are going to carry the day. And that's why Amari Irvin is now in the class.
Yeah, I guess his measurables make this an interesting pickup. But one of the things that I do like about it, Brian, is we talk a lot about position coaches trying to diversify their rooms. You talked about what Mike Mickens has done, bringing in a Don Schuler and Mark Zachary, guys that don't typically fit the bill. I think you're starting to see a little bit of that too with Max Bulla and now Chris Ash and Marcus Freeman wanting to diversify the linebacker room perhaps a little bit, because you go and you look at the roster of who the players that they have now and players that will likely still be here or have the, I don't want to say likely, have the opportunity to still be here when Ellis and when Amari get on campus. I mean, Madden Framos, 6'2", 235. Jaden Osbury could. He's 6'2", 228. Kingston could. He's 6'3", 230. Josiah Keokuk, he's 6'2", 220. Kahanu Kia is 6'2", 230. So it could be about diversifying as well, as long as the main core is still like they're just really good football players. Because above all else, that is one thing when we talked about the commitment that we talked about last time. His name is escaping me. When we talked about Khalil Terry's commitment to Notre Dame, we talked about how they just want good football players at their basis. And I think that that's what we're going to see when we pop in the film on Amari Irvin, is that he's just a good football player. The other thing I like about this recruiting pickup here, Brian, is, we talk all the time about Notre Dame wanting to have success in their hotbeds. And you talked about how he's from Florida, gets you a foothold at IMG Academy. You're out battling Southern schools. For this guy, he had offers from Miami, Florida, Florida State, Georgia. So adding another to the repertoire, and some of the other defensive prospects that they have in their 2027 class already committed are from California, Alabama, now Florida, and then obviously Wisconsin with Richie Flanagan. So definitely going to be one that is impactful for their national recruiting efforts. Florida's a state that they want to maintain a presence in. So I like that as well with this recruiting pickup.
The Southern presence in this class has been impressive. I mean, you've got a quarterback from Georgia, a linebacker from Alabama. Now you have another quarter. And Amari is not your typical, like he is a Florida kid. Like a lot of kids from IMG aren't necessarily Florida kids. They come from all over the place. Two of the most recent IMG kids that Notre Dame landed that were good, that had success, were a kid from Illinois and a kid from Pennsylvania, Houston Griffith and Robert Hainsey. Obviously, Tony Jones Jr. was from Florida as well. Spencer Perry, who they got from IMG, was from Alabama. So they've got some kids from here, and not all of them are from Florida. Amari's a Miami kid. I mean, his family lives in Miami. His brother went to Columbus down in Miami when he was in high school. And so you're definitely seeing a Notre Dame starting to have more and more of an impact in the South, which is, again, one of the reasons that we've said teams don't want Notre Dame to start being good. Because if Notre Dame starts being good and they start being able to go down south and get kids from IMG and get kids out of Alabama and quarterbacks from Georgia that they beat, that Ohio State wanted and that they beat Georgia for, things like that, then look, you're going to be able to kind of go anywhere. And that's what Notre Dame has been proving here under Marcus Freeman, is they can go anywhere. And this is just another example of that. So certainly that blueprint part of it is impactful. When you look at the class impact a little bit deeper, Trevor, obviously I think this is a year where you probably want at least 3 linebackers in the class. You only signed 2 last year. Notre Dame intentionally only signed 2 last year. It was not a great linebacker class nationally. They really liked Thomas Davis Jr. Jacoby Clapper is a kid that they view as a very versatile football player. He doesn't have the same body type as Kingston Viliama Asa. He's not like the high-level elite prospect that Kingston was, but like he's a very good football player that is in the mold of Kingston in that he can do so many things. Jacoby can rush the passer. He can drop into coverage. He can play off-ball linebacker. So there's some versatility, a Jalen Sneed type, a Kingston type, and that versatile type of linebacker role. And they kind of kicked the tires in a couple of the linebackers, but it wasn't a great linebacker class. They got 2 kids they really liked. And, when Iowa pushes for a linebacker in the Midwest, which they did for Jacoby Clapper, you kind of pay attention. We always talk about, what top prospects, and then we always talk about, like, how does Iowa keep doing what they keep doing? Because they keep finding kids like Jacoby Clapper. Fortunately for Notre Dame fans, Notre Dame coaching staff is also smart enough to find that kid from St. Xavier in Cincinnati and say, hey, we're going to get that kind of kid. So the other thing, too, is I think there was an early glance at the 27 linebacker class, and they realized that's a much deeper linebacker class. And so they kind of put some of the numbers towards that class. So this gives them 2. I don't think that you're going to see them stop at 2 now. I think that you're going to probably have them go out and get a 3rd, maybe even a 4th linebacker in this class. So this is a strong way to start. Obviously, Amari Irvin's a kid that's ranked as the number 123 overall player in the country when it comes to ESPN. He earned a top 150 caliber grade on the Irish Breakdown board. He grades that really high on like athleticism, instincts, toughness, physicality. He's good in coverage. He's a very impactful cover player. The thing that drags him down outside of the top 100 is just the measurables. I mean, that's really the reason why he fits there. If the measurables aren't an issue, then I think he's going to be a really good football player. And we've seen plenty of big time linebackers that aren't aren't that tall. I mean, just even recently for Georgia with Nakobe Dean. So, and I think Ellis McGaskin's an absolute stud linebacker as well. So this is a strong start to the linebacker class, while also being able to recognize that these two kids don't fit your normal profile for what Notre Dame looks for. Like, I'm not going to deny that, and I'm not going to act like that's not a little bit surprising. Like somebody asked, are you surprised Notre Dame is going with shorter players in this class? Well, again, I just think that's what they're kind of looking for. They're looking for football players. You know, like, yeah, they'd like profiles, but they're looking for football players. Khalil Terry's about the same size that he's maybe, what, a half an inch shorter than Don Schuler, you know, slightly taller than Nick Reddish. At the end of the day, you want football players. That's what Marcus Freeman's always put a premium on. If that means sometimes you don't take guys that necessarily have the length they're looking for, sure. What I don't want them to do is make a habit of this, where this year's class and next year's class are all filled out with 5'11", 6-foot linebackers. But it's okay to take a couple of those kids if you're mixing them in with some other types, because if the length becomes a problem, then you go with somebody else. If it doesn't, then this kid's going to go out there and be a big-time football player for you. So I think at the end of the day, they just decided, are these kids' other traits enough to overcome the fact that they don't have this trait? And clearly the staff decided that that was going to be true when it came to both Ellis McGaskin and Amari Irvin. I don't think Khalil Terry has a length problem. Khalil Terry's not tall. Khalil Terry's very long. And the issue for this, the thing the staff looks for is length. Length is not height. There are guys who are tall. Drew Tranquil's 6'2". He did not have good length. That was one of the knocks on him coming out of into the NFL draft. He only had like 30-inch arms. Length is not height. Sometimes they go hand in hand, but if you're a 6'2" linebacker with 30-inch arms, you're going to have the same length as a 6-foot linebacker with 33-inch arms. Actually, less than a guy with 33-inch arms, right? Like, length is not height. Sometimes they go together. If you're 6'2" with 33-inch arms, you're going to have better length than a 6-foot guy with 33-inch arms. So I just think you have to weigh all those traits together, and that's what the staff did. And now they've got two talented top 150 caliber linebackers in this class. I would probably put Ellis ahead of Amari as just a pure off-ball linebacker. I think Amari brings a little bit more versatility. He's, I think Jaden Alsbury actually might be another guy that you look at Amari, and his game really resembles a lot of what Jaden's was in high school. I just don't know that he's as explosive as Jaden was, and he's not quite as big as what Jaden was. Jaden was 6'2" and a little bit more impactful in that regard.
Yeah, but regardless, definitely a good pickup, like you alluded to. Notre Dame is looking to attract talented football players, and Amari Evans definitely fits that bill. Brian, I'm ready to dive into some film if you are.
I will be as soon as this commercial's done going on the huddle. They have like the longest commercials now, dude. It's so crazy. It's like you got to wait like a solid minute with some of these commercials before.
You don't want to buy a Honda?
No, I don't want to buy a Honda. Not even a little bit. I've already bought a car within the last couple of years. I'm hoping that lasts me another 20 years. So I tried to convince my wife I wanted to get a Mustang again, because my parents bought me a Mustang when I was 21. She's like, sure, when you reach, and she gave me like a goal, and I was like, okay, we're never going to get to that. So it's like, way to set an unfair standard. But yeah, I'm not going to be buying that anytime soon. But yeah, we got our car. So let's look at some film of Amari Irvin here, folks. First thing you're going to notice is he does a lot of different things for their high school team. Number 4, that's where that Jaden Alsbury aspect looks like. So you'll notice he's not a real big player. You look at this. I love this instincts though. Like, right, he's playing his zone. Look at him getting uncovered. He makes a play on the ball. He had 3 sacks and 3 interceptions, I believe, this year for IMG. So that's a guy that makes an impact in a lot of different ways. Look at this block destruction here. He's a very, very rangy linebacker. Look at that quickness. That blocker has zero chance at getting to him. Like, look how quickly he reads that play. Like, this is what I talked about, Trev. If you're going to be short and not have great length, you better have some traits to make up for it. And he shows about 3 of them right here. Number 1 is great read on the play, right? Great awareness of what's around him. Quickness, speed, and then look at that tackle.
Yep.
Great form tackle right here by Amari. So another example of a kid that great reads. He's flying downhill. He gets to the ball, plays with great pad level. So you see the traits that people like from him in this game.
A lot of hustle. He has good speed, man.
Yeah, he can run. He can run. Yeah, this is as he put in the notes, an end of the half play. So this is against Hoover in Alabama, which is always a national powerhouse. You see him get through the hole. Look at that block destruction right there, reading the play, blowing up the puller, getting to the running back. That's a heck of a play right there. It's a heck of a play right there. He's a
very instinctive. Very instinctive.
Look at that. Taking the proper angle, blowing up the lead blocker, getting off the block, and then getting to the ball carrier, knock somebody's helmet off.
It's a powerful kid, man.
Yeah, he is. For lack of size, he. Well, and if you ever watch his dad play, Trevor, I'm going to have you after the show because this is a little bit before your time. Cedric Irvin is a little bit before your time. After the show, I'm going to have you go watch some Cedric Irvin senior clips at Michigan State, and you're like, oh yeah, I get it. I see where that came. But like, look at that. Look at him working through the trash here. And now you can see this is a little bit of why I say you see some Jaden Alsbury in this game. Look at him. Look at that base. Working across the, scraping over top, just getting over the block, stepping to the hole. Driving his hips through contact. Yeah.
Keeping his shoulders square. He's a very good fundamental football player.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. Here he is out in space, driving through the defender here. This is at Penn. I'm not sure who this is against, but this is definitely at Penn's on Penn's field. So just look at him take that lead blocker and drive him into the backfield. That's a heck of a play. But he's powerful too. Like you said, Trev, he's a very powerful player. He does not mess around. Amari's a physical kid. And you can see that. See, look, he's got good length, even though he's short. It just doesn't have like the elite length that you'd want to make up for. But he's a well-built kid. He's well put together. There's no doubt about that. Very instinctive football player. Look at him scraping downhill, not over pursuing, being smart. Let's make sure there's no cutback, protect my lane, and then closing the quarterback.
Yeah, the second he makes the decision to go, he moves. Like flies downhill, still keeps his shoulder square, not opens himself up to any sort of move from the pass catcher there. And then I think
that's a heck of a play right there, Trev. He picked it off. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It's a heck of a play.
But again, Brian, that's what we talk about. Like just being a good football player. That's just a good football player play. Like above all else.
Yep. Watch the swim move right here. Boom. Now, I don't know that move works a lot against some college players, but I love that he's got that in his repertoire, closes on the quarterback. And look how powerful he is. Like, he's not exactly running like 1,000 miles an hour, and that quarterback gets rocked. Like, that's a physical hit. He's coming off the edge, dropping into coverage. Like, look at that. Boom. He's a smart football player. And you can see he lines up all over the place. He's dropping into zone coverage here. He lines up off ball. He plays out in the slot. Does a lot of different things, and he does them very well. Look at that downhill quickness. And he is like, this is another example of this kid is not afraid to hit people. Like he looks for contact.
His helmet flew off.
He's not looking to avoid. This is the second offensive. Is that his helmet? Yeah, it's his helmet that came off. Yeah, that's a penalty in college. But yeah, but he still goes after the kid and takes him down with no helmet on.
It's a dog, man. That's
yeah. Yep. Yeah, he's a tough player, man. Very tough player. But he's also a good athlete. He's not like that he just lacks size. I mean, if he was 6'2", 230, like everybody would be like, oh my God, what a great prospect this is. Like the only reason he's not a higher ranked prospect is his size. That's it. That's the only reason. Look at that patience. Look at that. Like this is a good play because he's not overcommitting. He's not, you know what I mean? Like he's not, okay, I got to know my job, get downhill, show good pursuit, like, I don't know. I just like the kid as a player. I like him as a player.
I do too.
You know
Very
what I mean?
instinctive, fundamentally sound. He's a powerful, strong kid.
Yeah. Because just so we're clear, everybody's on the same page. The thing that play's pointing at is not Amari. This thing's pointing at like that kid, but Amari is that's Amari on this clip. Just so we're clear. But look at the patience as he gets downhill, right? He doesn't fly downhill. He doesn't go out of control, and that allows him to then redirect and get outside to the quarterback. It's just another smart football play. But yeah, at first I thought he was the other kid. I was like, nope, that thing's incorrect. Like that doesn't look like him. Good pursuit. Another that's against Hoover, I believe, also. Yeah, he's a good player. Is that St. Joe that they're playing there? It kind of looks like it. Yeah. Yeah, he's a good football player. So you guys see what Notre Dame is looking for. You guys see the intelligence. You see the patience. You see the closing speed. You see the power. He just lacks size, like ideal size. Well, I should say he lacks ideal length. He's got a good frame. I mean, he's going to be 230 when it's all said and done. He'll look a lot like Jaden Alsbury, just not as tall, But he's already even a little thicker than Jaden was coming out of high school. And just the power. He's a powerful kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat, USMA, high football IQ. Absolutely. Very smart football player.
It's not beyond the realm of possibility. He grows an inch either.
Yeah.
Never know.
Yeah. I mean, and look, here's what you're getting. You're getting a kid who, best case scenario, is a multi-year starter and a team captain. Worst case scenario, you're getting a 4-year starter on special teams who's a rotation player his last couple of years. Yeah. If he's willing to stick it out. Like, that's the worst case scenario with a kid like this, in my opinion, barring injury. I mean, I just mean development. And, obviously injuries can derail kids. Bad attitudes can derail kids. Those are things that I can't control. I'm just saying, as a football player, worst case scenario is you're going to get a kid who's a multi-year rotation player and an absolute demon on special teams for 4 years. Yeah. Best case scenario, you get a multi-year starter and a potential team captain type of guy. That's what you get. That's what you're getting.
Does he play any other side of the ball, or is it just defense?
No, not at IMG. You don't usually
play one side of the ball. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
His brother's a running back, but he's a more explosive athlete than his brother was. His brother was also smart and heady, had really good feet and balance. He just lacked the juice. That Amari has. So that's Amari Irvin, Notre Dame's latest commitment number 7 in the class. Joins Teddy Gerard, quarterback from Georgia. James Halter, offensive tackle from Pennsylvania. Richie Flanagan, who's kind of a two-way lineman from Wisconsin. You also have Ellis McGaskin at linebacker. You now have Amari Irvin at linebacker. You have Khalil Terry as a safety nickel type of player. And, of course, the best snapper in the country, and Sean Kraft, is in the class as well. So 7 players now in the 2027 class, and I expect Notre Dame to keep adding a decent number of players to this over the next month and a half. I think they'll add several players to the class. So that'll be that's a nice way to kick it off. I got the alert, got a text message from somebody, was like, hey, it's going to happen today, 1:00. I was like, cool, let me finish getting the story ready. So we're able to get that done. But this was more of a when, not if kind of recruitment. And today's the day.
Well, folks, that's going to do it for part 1 of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We have a loaded slate today. But before we get there, make sure you hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell, share this podcast with your friends and family, anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in part 2 of today's show here in the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, we're talking Notre Dame, Stanford, and today is the day that we are giving our predictions, game records, how we see this going down. Now, talk about maybe some potential concerns. This is the last regular season for Notre Dame. In case anybody forgot, kickoff is going to be Saturday night. It's a late one, 10:30 p.m. Eastern time in Stanford, California, inside of Stanford Stadium. Right now, Notre Dame is favored by 32.5 points. The over-under set at 51.5 by our friends over at FanDuel. So, Brian, this is it's the last regular season game, and as crazy as it is to say, who would have thought? But here we are. Here we are. Last regular season game of 2025.
It's a little weird, to be honest with you, how quickly this season is gone. But yet at the same time, you start thinking about the A&M game and the Miami game, and to a degree, they seem like yesterday, and to a degree, they also seem like they were a long time ago. It wasn't that long ago we were hearing about all the who's going to start at quarterback discussion and all that other kind of stuff. So, it's been a very interesting few months, to say the least. And now Notre Dame gets one more shot to go out there and kind of make their case for why they should be in the college football playoff. So, and they get to do it against a rival and do it against a team that has been tough at home, 4-1 at home, 0-6 on the road. So hopefully Notre Dame can go add another one to the L column for them at home. But, we spent the week, kind of a real condensed week, moved everything up, but kind of fit everything in. So we're taking Thanksgiving off, and, we broke the game down, and now it's time for us to kind of put our final little bit, a little bit on this one here. So it's going to be fun.
Going to put our final stamp on this one, man. I'll get us kicked off with predictions here. I have Notre Dame winning this one. I have them winning 52-7. And I think that the level of dominance that we saw against Syracuse will carry over. And I'll explain what I mean. Like, look, Notre Dame has one final opportunity to make an impression on the committee. I think it's all Notre Dame from start to finish. And I think it's going to resemble Syracuse, not by final score. Obviously, I don't have Notre Dame winning 70-7. Nor do I think they're going to start off the game pick six, block punt for a touchdown, pick six.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be upset if that happened. But I'm talking about it's going to resemble Syracuse by the level of dominance, not by the final score margin. Notre Dame is a team that's hot right now, and they need to show the committee in their final opportunity that they are still hot and need to go and prove that in the postseason. I think Stanford, like a lot of the other offenses that Notre Dame has faced, I think Stanford's going to struggle to get the ball in or near the red zone. Brian, what was that you said over the last 2 games? The first team defense has allowed 3 points, and that was when they got the ball inside of basically in the red zone.
Against Pitt and Syracuse, the first team defense allowed a field goal. That's it. It was a 37-9 game. Pitt scored at the end of the game against the backup defense. The only touchdown of the game was a pick six by Pitt's defense. And then the only points they allowed against Syracuse was the touchdown at the end of the game, also within the last 5 seconds of the game against the backup defense. And then Pitt's field goal that Notre Dame got. So, and they only scored 6 points against the offense because the defense got those points back. And Pitt, so I'll put it like this. Notre Dame's starting defense has outscored their last 2 teams' starting offenses. I'm dead serious, because Notre Dame got a pick 6 against Pitt. That gives them 7. And then a Don Schuler returned an interception for a touchdown. So Notre Dame's defense scored 9 points against Pitt. Pitt's starting offense scored 3. Last week, Notre Dame's starting defense scored 14 points. Syracuse's starting offense, entire team only scored 7. So, that's pretty good. But the only touchdown drive the first team defenses, or scoring drive the first team defenses allowed, was a field goal drive that literally where the offense did not get a first down. Went 3 in field goal, 3 plays field goal. Because they started 12.
That's so impressive. And I think the other thing that makes this game a little bit more interesting too is throughout Marcus Freeman's tenure, for all the great things that they've done, they haven't really finished the regular season off in a crazy strong note in terms of dominant performances. They obviously lost in 2022 in their final regular season game against USC. In 2023, yes, the final score was 56-23. At one point, that game was 16-14 with a Stanford lead in the final regular season game of 23. And then in 24, it was great. They capped off their 10-game win streak. That win all but secured their spot in the college football playoff. The defense gave up 35 points. And to the standard of what Marcus Freeman expects from this program, didn't really live up to that standard. Yes, I understand it's a rivalry game. You throw out records and all that. But it still brings it up in conversation that Notre Dame hasn't really finished the regular season off in that dominant fashion under Marcus Freeman yet, something that I know he will hold a grudge against. I know he knows that. He doesn't need me to say that out loud. I think that streak comes to an end on Saturday. Like I said, I think it's all Notre Dame from the jump. Notre Dame's offense is poised for a really explosive performance for a couple of different reasons. One, it's Jeremiah Love's final push for the Heisman. And then you mix that with Stanford's bad secondary. I think that's just a recipe for a big night from Mike Denbrock's group. I really do. Stanford's secondary is just not good. I know CJ Carr is itching to get on the field and light it up because he finished the Syracuse game with 9 passing attempts, and everything that we've heard is he's the ultra competitor. He wants to take the big shot every play. If he lives within this offense, he's going to get big chunk plays in both the pass or the run game. And then I just defensively, I think they completely shut down the struggling Stanford offense. Like we painted the picture yesterday, there are still some individual players that you have to keep your eye on. I think that in the trenches, especially on defense, Notre Dame's defensive line is going to give Stanford's offense a really hard time. I think by all intents and purposes, this game will be over by halftime. So I have Notre Dame winning this one big, 52-7.
We're close. I have Notre Dame winning 56-10. I don't normally predict like giant blowouts like this, but I think we've learned the last couple weeks, like really last 3 weeks, this team is. It's like when a team does something once, maybe even twice, you don't really get too like, okay, it's a nice streak, but you're now 3 games in a row. I mean, they destroyed Navy. They destroyed Pitt. They destroyed Syracuse, and Stanford's a lot closer to Syracuse than they are Navy and Pitt. So, I think there will be a little bit of maybe an early game lull. Maybe Notre Dame's offense only scores on once of their first couple possessions, and maybe the defense allows a couple first downs early because, Stanford's going to have some things designed for them, but there's the West Coast travel. They just haven't started well out West. I mean, against Stanford, but they did start pretty well offensively the last time they were out in California. Last year the Notre Dame offense looked pretty good early in the game against, USC, but the defense struggled a little bit. But honestly, Trevor, the Stanford offense can't do to Notre Dame what the USC defense did. But, honestly, 3 of your last 4 games out West, your offense has sputtered a little bit in the first half. We saw the offense, what they do first drive against USC in 22, didn't they turn it over on downs?
Yeah.
Then they drive down the field and go for it on – then they tried like that fake tight end thing for the 8th time, and it got stopped. And, so they've just sputtered a little bit out of the gate, and I could maybe see a little bit of that, but they're going to turn it on pretty early, like late first, second quarter. It won't be all that close at halftime, and they'll put the game away in the second half. So I'm going 56-10. And I think one of Stanford's scores will come against the Notre Dame second team defense.
It also wouldn't surprise me to see another defensive touchdown in this one either. Like, they've now scored defensive touchdowns in back-to-back games. I'll never predict it. That I'm not feeding that into my score prediction. It just wouldn't surprise me if we saw it again. Mm-hmm. I think this defense is still very much geared towards like, hey, ears back, let's do this thing. We're hungry for more. So you're 56-10. I'm 52-7. Those are our final score predictions. Brian, let's talk some game wreckers here. And like we do every week, we're going to divvy it up into offense and defense. So I'll get us kicked off here with offense. The first one is CJ Carr. The way that my common theme here for game wreckers is not, you need this player to play the game of their lives to beat Stanford. That's just not where we're at. But I am looking at this of getting them into a rhythm for the postseason. I am, like I said last night in the playoff show, I'm very confident Notre Dame makes the playoffs. We can talk about whether they host or they're on the road, but I'm very confident that they make it. So do things in this game to get the players that you need in a rhythm for the playoffs. And that first one for me on offense is CJ Carr. The level of dominance that they showed against Syracuse was extremely impressive. But selfishly, I do wish I could have seen CJ Carr throw more than 9 passes last Saturday too. I understand why they didn't, but this is your last in-game scenario to get him into a rhythm before they either are on the road or host a playoff game. In fact of the matter is before against Pitt, CJ did some really good things. He also had some pretty bad mistakes, but then the game before that, he looked really good against Navy in the snow. And so just another good performance from CJ Carr is going to give me all the more confidence of what we're going to see come postseason. I have no concerns about if he'll be too nervous or if the stage will be too big for him getting there. It's just about performance on the field. So CJ Carr is my number one game wrecker in this one, Brian. How about you?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was kind of thinking about Jeremiah Love again, but I really think you're going to need CJ Carr to come out in this game and really thrive. I do. I think that he's going to have to be, and maybe this is wishful thinking more than just how the game is going to go. I mean, maybe they just come out and just run all over Stanford like they have the last 2 games they've played. Notre Dame has absolutely just tore Stanford up on the ground in recent games. But I do think this is a game where Stanford's got the toughness and the coaching on defense to say, we're going to do the best we can to make life a little bit challenging for your run game, because we watched you, run for 229 yards and 4 touchdowns on us last year. We watched you, run for 381 yards and 5 touchdowns the year before that. I kind of think they're gonna maybe have an idea of, hey, maybe we should try to stop this a little bit. And you're gonna need CJ to make good decisions. That includes so many things. That includes making sure the run game's going in the right direction, making sure that they're checking out of things, checking into things. But at the end of the day, CJ's going to have to come out and hit some big throws and move the chains when he needs to, but then hit some big throws down the field and say, hey, look, if you want to come out there and try to take away the run game, we're going to make you pay for it. And that's what I think it is. Because, look, if this game is going to go the way that you think it is, you said, 55 to 3?
52 to 7.
52 to 7. I think 56 to 10 for me. If this game's going to go the way that I think it's going to go, that means CJ Carr is going to have to come out and throw the ball effectively. I don't know that Notre Dame can score 56 points in this game without that, unless you do get multiple, scores on defense. And when I mean scores on defense, I mean either a direct score on defense or, a play that sets you up to score. I think of Jordan Patelho, blocking a punt with Syracuse back deep and recovering a punt at the 2-yard line back in 2022 against Syracuse, if you remember that. And obviously you also had a pick 6 in that game from the safety. Joseph. Yeah, Brandon Joseph had an early pick 6 on the quarterback in that game. So your defense helped you out a lot in that game, and you're able to score a lot of points, even though your offense wasn't really doing a whole lot in that game at times. So I just think CJ is going to come out and play at a very high level in this game and finish the regular season at a high level. That could be me wishing it to be true, and that is me wishing it to be true. But I also think, just matchup wise, this is a secondary giving up just south of 300 yards passing per game.
Yeah,
and they've played some good quarterbacks and they've played some good receiving cores, but I think you can absolutely make a case that this is the best quarterback receiver tandem that they'll have played all year. With all due respect to Miami's in that conversation, they played Pitt with Mason Heinzel. They played Virginia in that group. But I still think the combination of CJ Carr plus the receivers plus Eli Raridon plus the running backs out of the backfield is the best quarterback skill player combination that Stanford's played all year. And I think they're going to perform well. And they don't do the things that concern me, like Pitt did. Can they put pressure on the quarterback? They don't put pressure on the quarterback, which means if they're going to get to CJ Carr, either the line doesn't play well, or B, they have to overcommit resources, which then probably won't go very well. Teams have tried that, and it hasn't gone well against Notre Dame.
My second game record, for more so what it means for him individually, but also what it means for the team, is Jeremiah Love. It's his final regular season game in a Notre Dame uniform. Go out on a high note. There are things that you were able to do to push yourself towards the Heisman, winning the Doak Walker, winning the Maxwell, breaking the regular season rushing record. Now, like we talked about yesterday, if you live within the confines of the offense and don't try to go play hero ball, what does hero ball look like for Jeremiah Love? Not trying to hurdle every defender that comes your way. You're not a patient runner. You're just trying to, you're trying to break everything. If you just do what you've been doing the last couple of weeks, I think that he's somebody that can end the regular season on a high note. And he is somebody that Notre Dame needs to continue being hot going into the postseason, because of his health last season, Jeremiah Love wasn't as big of a factor in the postseason as many people were thinking that he was going to be. He had the 98-yard run against IU and that miraculous 2-yard run against Penn State. In between those, defenses kind of held him in check because he wasn't 100% healthy. Now, that didn't stop him from a 98-yard run or hurdling, King, the linebacker from Penn State, or that insane 2-yard run. But you need him at 100%. You need him gelling. I think Stanford is the right opportunity to get him going. And the little kind of frosting on the cake, if you will, it gives him the opportunity to add to his own personal accolades. So Jeremiah Love is my number 2 game record, Brian.
I'm going to hold him in a special category here at the end. My number 2 game record is going to be Eli Raridon. I think this is a game where, if Stanford is smart, they're going to do 2 things. They're going to say, we're not going to let 4 beat us, and we're not going to let 0 beat us. So we're going to bracket him into the boundary, because Notre Dame doesn't move him around enough, unless they change that. And we're going to then load the box against number 4, which means somebody else is going to have to step outside of him. And I'm kind of in that, if it's not Eli, it needs to be Jordan Faison. Like, it needs to be one of those two. One of those two has to step up in this game and say, okay, you want to single cover me? Cool. I'm going to have a big day. And I'd like to say, I mean, Jordan Faison's a guy who hasn't really done a whole lot lately. He got off to a really good start. He hasn't been as targeted as lately. He hasn't been a guy that's really put up a lot of big numbers in a few weeks. Malachi's kind of passed him as the leader in receptions. He hasn't really had a game since Boston College, and that was really fueled by one play. He had the one long play in that game. This could be the game where Jordan kind of, says, okay, don't forget about me. Like, you're worried about Jeremiah and you're worried about Eli and you're worried about Malachi and JD Price and all that. Don't forget about me, because I'm a playmaker too. So Eli or Jordan, one of those two has to come out and say, hey, like, while you guys focus on all these dudes, this is what makes us so good, because we're not just the J Love show or the J Love and Malachi show or the J Love and Eli and Malachi show. We're all ballers, and you can't guard all of us. You're going to have to pick your poison. So either Eli or Jordan Faison, one of those two is going to have to step up early and be playmakers in this game. And that means, making those kind of game-wrecking plays that says, crap, we thought we had a really good game plan to shut these two guys down, and now this guy's killing us. Like, that's what one of those two guys has to be. I think the matchup for Eli is more favorable. But I could see a scenario where if Stanford comes out and they're playing a lot of off coverage, that Jordan's hitting some hitches and some slants and some post corners and some comebacks where he's able to square him up and make plays. I could see something like that as well. So one of those two guys is my final game wrecker, or my second game wrecker. Trevor, who's your third?
Yeah, I like it, man. Honestly, for a lot of the reasons that you listed out, Malachi Fields is my final game wrecker. Couple of reasons. One, sticking with the common theme of getting people ready for the playoffs. And you brought Malachi Fields in for a reason. I would be lying if I told you that I thought that reason was to beat Stanford. But that reason was to bring him in is to have him ready to go in the postseason. What I'm going to be very interested to see in this game is, what does Mike Denbrock continue to do to get him the ball in different ways? I'm not talking give it to him on jet sweeps, but I like some of the things that they've done the last couple of weeks, moving him around into the slot down in the red zone. Against Syracuse, we saw him on a slot fade. I want to see more of those things, because it won't be a secret come the postseason that they're going to try to load the box to take away the run against Jeremiah Love and bracket Malachi Fields. I think this is their opportunity to then work on those things, in addition to what you're talking about of 9 has to get involved, 6 has to get involved, 2 has to get involved. Ideally, in about a month, 1 starts getting involved. But you will need Malachi Field to make some plays while he is still being bracketed. Don't put the ball into harm's way and just throw it up into triple coverage and say, well, zero's down there somewhere. But you are going to need to find ways to have him be an effective part of the offense. And so that is why I think that he's going to be my third game wrecker, because this is now the opportunity to continue to work on some of those things. So agree with everything that you're saying, but for also a lot of those reasons, Fields is my third. How about you, man?
I'm going to not use one player for my third. I think that the Notre Dame offensive line has to have a day. I think if they're going to here's why. I'm not putting Jeremiah Love in my game wrecker category, because we know, and everything you said is fine. I'm just doing something a little bit different this time. Yeah. Last regular season game. We know Jeremiah Love's that dude. We know that Jeremiah Love is the best player in college football. But a great running back can only do so much. I've only ever seen one great running back do something with not a lot around him, and that's Barry Sanders. And even he had Lomas Brown for most of his career, you know what I mean, who's a Hall of Fame caliber player. So, in my opinion. So I'm going to look at it like this. The offensive line stepping up and showing that they want to be the fuel to Jeremiah Love's final Heisman push is going to tell me a lot about Joe Rudolph's room. And this is coming from someone who I mentioned the other day. As a Broncos fan, I love hearing the stories of Mark Schlereth and those guys talking about, hey, we knew at more than anybody how many yards Terrell Davis had each week, because nobody wanted him to get to 2,000 more than we did, because that that reflects on us.
Yeah.
And so they are looking at it like, hey, our running back has a chance to go be a Heisman Trophy contender. Our quarterback has a chance to be a freshman All-American. You know what I mean? Like, this is on us, fellas. And we're going to be the fuel to this. I want to see Jeremiah Love running through holes where nobody touches him.
Yeah.
Because that says a lot about the line. Say whatever you want about how bad Syracuse is. Jeremiah Love didn't get touched. Now, on the first touchdown run, he had to make a guy miss in the backfield. But the line wasn't accounting for that guy. That was a safety coming from depth off the edge. But he's making guys miss on the second, third level because he's getting through the first level full speed untouched. Same thing with Jadarian on his. Now, what the difference between a 15-yard run and a 58-yard run, or a 15-yard run and a 68-yard run, which is what Jeremiah and Jadarian had last week. JD had the 58, Jeremiah had the 68. Jeremiah also had a 64, a 50-45, is the back, the talent of the back. But what gets you to 15 is how good your line is. And I want to see them dominate because when Jeremiah and Jadarian get through the first level untouched with downhill speed, it's a wrap. And that's going to tell me what the demeanor of this line is. Like, yeah, they've beat up on an inferior defensive line last week, and they beat up on an undersized Pitt D line and beat up on an undersized Navy D line a little bit, but still had their fair share of issues against those teams. But I just feel like that line as a unit has just gotten better each week. And now's your chance to show me, okay, yeah, you're playing more together, you're playing more cohesively, you're doing your job better, but now I want to see if you've got that dog in you as a group. Do you have that, okay, we're about to go get our boy the Heisman in you? Because Freeman can't do that, Rudolph can't do that, Denbrock can't do that, Jeremiah Love can't do that. Them 5 boys up front. And then number 9 and number 7, that's who is going to go out this week and determine whether or not Jeremiah Love is a game wrecker. Because you and I both know if they do their job, he will wreck the game. Yeah, I don't care if it's Stanford, Ohio State, whoever. If the O-line does their job, Jeremiah will wreck the game. Just like we saw last year with Ohio State's running backs in the title games. Their line did the job. They let Travion and Quinshawn get through the line, first line untouched, and they went and did things, right? They did their job, and the game wreckers took over. Same thing. If the line does their job, then we know those guys will wreck the game because they're arguably the 2 best backs in college football. Certainly 2 of the 5 best backs in college football. But I just want to see if the line has that dog in them because that's going to tell me a lot about this game, but then the next week's game. So I'm going to predict that they are going to show me something in the positive in this regard, Trevor, that they're going to show me that they do have that dog in them. And so I'm predicting the O-line. And that's why I don't have J Love as that. It's all built on all these guys are doing their job for him.
Yeah.
Right. CJ's got to do his job for him. Another receiver's got to step up. And I love the balance of what we had this week. You talked about J Love. You talked about Malachi. Those dudes got to be dudes. I'm focusing more on the complementary players along with CJ doing their job because that's what great teams do. And this is your last chance to show that you're a great team.
Love it. I love that pick. Let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball. And Brian, this one I had a little bit more of like a grouping instead of like individual people. And so for my first, I guess, call it set of game wreckers, I'm going more like the defensive ends. Specifically, I'm talking about Boubacar and Bryce, but you want to put, Jordan Patello in there, Junior Tuialamaka, Josh Burnham.
Burnham's Logan been their best DN the last month of the season. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. Absolutely. Because Boubacar's been nasty too.
Well, and that's what's cool is Josh Burnham has been their best defensive end the last month, not because any of the other guys took a step back. Right. It's just he's been balling out.
He's been dominating. Exactly right.
That's really, really impressive. But it's one of those. Look, I talked about it yesterday. The offensive tackles at Stanford have given up a combined 24 hits plus sacks on the quarterback in 11 games. Specifically Khalil House, who Boubacar and Josh Burnham will both be going up against. Now, I talked about how I think Stanford's going to struggle to get into or near the red zone for the majority of the time that the first team defense is in. A lot of that holding true is them just absolutely lighting up Elijah Brown, making him uncomfortable in the pocket, speeding up his process, making him see things that aren't actually there. It's not a mystery that the numbers for pressures have gone up along with the interception numbers that have gone up. And, we talk all the time about marrying your coverage with your front. Got to continue to do that in this game. So one of, if not multiple of Boubacar, Bryce Young, Josh Burnham, Tui Alamaka, Jordan Botelho, potentially like a Logan Thomas, depending on what they do to replace KVA, a Jalen Sneed, somebody off the edge or multiple people off the edge are my first set of game wreckers here, Brian.
I normally start front to back, but I'm going to go a little bit different this week. I'm going to go for, there's a lot of angst about losing Kingston Viliama-Asa, rightfully so. Great player. I got to say this too. What I found interesting this week is whenever all the Notre Dame players kept talking about Kingston, do you ever notice the first thing they never said was never about football? The first thing coach or player, teammate, whatever, the first thing they said, they start talking about him as a young man. Like, that is something I hope his parents recognize. Like, wow, these people don't talk about him as a football player first, because what a great job they've done of raising him as a young man. But it speaks volumes about the respect his teammates have for him as a leader, as a player, as a person, more so than just a playmaker. I just thought that was interesting to point out. Having said that, I think the linebackers as a whole, but I'm going with one linebacker in particular, Jaden Alsbury. And I think Jaden Alsbury, like, y'all do know I start, right? Like, you do know that I'm the starter at will linebacker, right? Like, all this talk about how good Drake is, and Drake's been nasty in the last 9 games. All this talk about how good Kingston is, and he's been nasty. Don't forget about me. And this just kind of strikes me as one of those games where I don't think Jaden Alsbury is the type of young man who is like me. He's not like me, and that would be my mindset would be, oh, you guys want to talk about him? I'm going to show you I'm the man. Like, that's kind of my mentality. I think with Jaden, however, that's the end result. But for him, it's going to be more about, okay, my boy is down. Now let me go step up and be that guy in his place. And be extra locked in and extra focused and extra, just really impactful. That's kind of how I'm feeling that what we're going to see out of Jaden Alsbury this weekend. And he's just kind of been getting better and better each week. 3 of his 4 tackles for loss have been in the last 4 games. He's been real impactful in the run game. He was great against Navy. I just have a feeling that this is going to be a game against the Stanford ground game where Jaden Alsbury is going to be like, hey, I got this. Don't worry. You know what I mean? Like, we know KVA's out. We all got to step up. I got this. So I'm actually going to go with Jaden Alsbury. It could be Madden Faramo. It could be Jalen Sneed. It could be, Drake Bowen is even better than he's already been. But I just have a feeling that Jaden Alsbury is going to go out there and be like, hey, we got this. We got this. And now my mentality of looking at that is like, don't forget about me. I'm the man too. I think his is more of like, hey, fellas, we're good. I got this. You know what I mean? So I think he's going to go out and have a game. Yeah.
I love that pick. Mine is also a linebacker, but I'm going with the young buck. I'm going with Madden Faramo.
Yeah.
There's going to be a
going
couple
out west,
moments.
going back home.
That's, man, same page, man. Same page. Like, it's a homecoming game for him. 1.
Yeah.
2, he is going to have several plays in this game where I think a lot of Notre Dame fans, we're going to talk about it in the postseason, where it's a lot of losing KVA is tough. And holy crap, did you see what Madden Faramo did?
Yeah.
Like, I think he's going to have a couple of plays like that. And it won't be one where it's like, they're totally fine without Kingston. Not claiming that at all. You're better when 27 is in pads. You just are. But there's going to be a lot of things that I think 19 does on Saturday that people are going to be like, yeah, they'll be okay. A lot of testaments to recruiting. A lot of testaments to Max Bulla developing young guys. So I have Madden Faramo as my second game wrecker. I mean, shoot, man, the most meaningful, the first opportunity he got to play meaningful snaps against Purdue, he came in on his first drive, had a pass breakup that led to a Christian Gray interception. The dude just plays ball. He got his first sack against Syracuse last weekend. He's already been credited with 6 defensive stops. I mean, I'm excited to watch Madden Faramo have a little bit bigger of a sample size. It is unfortunate that it came at the detriment of Kingston getting hurt. That's really, really unfortunate, but I am excited to watch Baden Frema go out, listening to the player press conferences. I've never heard him talk. Like, I've never heard him in an interview or anything.
He is
That is a
sharp.
That is a
Yeah.
sharp kid, man. I mean, if you guys
I
haven't yet,
would not have sounded like that as a freshman in college. I started as a freshman in college. I would have not sounded that mature at a press conference as a freshman. I promise you that.
Bro, catch me on a bad
Guarantee
day at 28, and I don't know if I sound like that. Like that is a sharp kid, man.
Yeah.
That's a really sharp kid. But I'm expecting a dominant Notre Dame defensive performance. I think Madden's going to play a part in that. You know what the over-under is for Stanford's total yards on FanDuel right now?
Oh, I'd love to hear this.
218.5.
Wow.
Yeah, that's their over-under.
I'll be honest with you. If this team has the focus I think they're going to have, I would take the under.
I would too. Yeah.
I mean, let's think about that. So you said FanDuel's over-under is, you said 218 yards for them, right?
Yep,
total
218.5. Yes,
correct?
Sir. Yep.
So if you look at Notre Dame in recent games, they held a comparable team like Syracuse to 207. The majority of that was got in the last part of the game. They held Pitt, who is a top 30 offense, to 219. They held Navy, who is a top 30 offense, to 228. So, even those two top offenses were barely over that 218 mark, barely over. And when you look at Stanford's success, when they played Miami, they were at 144. That's really the only good defense they played. When they played BYU, they were at 161. So, I mean, they got 326 on Pitt. They threw the ball well on Pitt. Pitt doesn't have a great secondary. That would be my concern for Pitt this weekend in the matchup against Miami, which we'll get to. But, I mean, the two comparable defenses to Notre Dame, they held them to under 200. So I would hope that Notre Dame could also do that, hold them under 200 yards. The thing that bothers me is the yards they gave up to Syracuse and Pitt. Both of those teams were under 150 until the backup defense got on the field and then let them go. And I don't even put that on the backup defense. I put that more on Chris Ash and Marcus Freeman. And this isn't like crushing them kind of thing, but when you put those backups on the field, let them heat up the other team. They're still trying to score. You should let them go after them. Turn them loose. Let the linebackers blitz, do all that kind of stuff. Let them go out there and completely shut that team down. That's what I'd like to see. And it's also partly on Mike Denbrock and Jaywan Sider. Because if your backup running backs would stop ripping off freaking 30 to 50-yard touchdown runs, your defense wouldn't be on the field so much in the second half of games. I mean,
Chris Ash is just on the sideline. So go down.
Kenny, take a knee. No, nope, not happening. But I'm obviously being sarcastic with that. And that's not a criticism of Ash and Freeman so much. It's like, dude, heat them up. Stop letting these teams get these garbage touchdowns. But a lot of the metrics that are used nowadays look at like the FEI, the Fermo Efficiency Index, he takes out garbage time. So when he's doing his numbers for the Notre Dame defense and he's they're actually, I think they're up in the top 5. Let me pull up his defensive rankings. They are now, they're now the number 5 defense in college football. He takes out those garbage time points and yards for that. So I'm sure the committee has comparable data to that. But yeah, my number 2, Trevor, is normally I start up front, but I think Jason Onye and Jared Dawson have been absolute monsters lately, and I think they're going to continue to be monsters on Saturday. I think they're going to eat up the Stanford interior. I really do. I think Stanford's going to struggle to get anything going downhill, and I think a lot of it's going to be about those two guys. I think Jason Onye is, in the last 3 or 4 games, is playing the best football of his career. He's starting to play even better than he was last year leading up to his season-ending situation. Remember when he's starting to really flash? He's playing even better now than he was then. And I love that for him. His best friend on the team is Gabriel Rubio. And when his best friend goes down, Jason's like, all right, I'm going to step up and play great. Now, hopefully when Gabriel comes back in the postseason, Jason keeps playing like he is now. Jared Dawson and Elijah Hughes keep playing like they are now. And Gabriel Rubio is able to come back because I think we already know that Donovan Heinisch will play well in the postseason because he played well in the postseason last year. So that gives Notre Dame a chance to have a really deep 5-man versatile group of D tackles. But I just think Onye and Dawson have been monsters the last few games, and I think that's going to continue in this game. What's your final one there, Mr. Trowbridge?
Final one, I'm going with Jalen Stroman. He's making a back-to-back start, and he's coming off of just a superstar performance against Syracuse on Senior Day. I think that he now has the opportunity because he would rotate in. It's not like once Tay Johnson got inserted into the starting lineup, he just completely stopped playing. But I do think he became a little bit of an afterthought because of how exciting and how good the secondary looked with Tay Johnson in there. I think he now has the opportunity to go out against Stanford. He will be matched up against Sam Roush from time to time, a player that they will force the football to, like we talked about yesterday. I think Jalen Stroman has the opportunity to say, like, hey, guys, like, the safety rotation is now definitively 4 guys. It's Adon, Tay Johnson when he comes back healthy, Luke Talich, and me. And we're now all interchangeable, you know? And so I think he did a fantastic job against Syracuse to kind of, I hesitate to say like regain a lot of confidence because obviously the coaching staff was extremely confident in him to start. You know, Luke Talich still played a rotational role, but Jalen Stroman's going to be targeted somewhat this game going up against Sam Roush. I think he's going to have opportunities to get more turnovers. I think this is going to be a big game for him. I do. So if he can continue to stack, because for as impressive of what he did against Syracuse, it's like, okay, that was your best performance of the season. Now, can you stack it? And no, my expectation isn't going to be pick 6, block, punt, 2 tackles for a loss and lead the team in tackles. But if you can stack another good performance, man, it's going to look decent.
He literally has no chance of playing better than he did against Syracuse. I mean, because like you just mentioned 3 plays: pick 6, block, punt. What was the other one you said?
Pick 6, block, punt, 2 tackles for a loss.
Okay, like didn't even mention the 4th down stop that he had. You know what I mean? Like you didn't even mention all the big plays he had. If you just remove the pick 6 and the block punt, he still had the best game of his career. You know what I mean? It's like he was outstanding. But I love that. I love that you have him in there. I'm actually going Christian Gray. I'm going Christian Gray in this one because Christian has been very good since he came back. He had one play early against Pitt where he bit and they got over top of him on that first series. And other than that, he's been very good. He's playing a lot more confidently. You know, he's going against a guy. You know, he's going to get some guys at Stanford that are solid players that are going to be a challenge, but guys I think he can run with. I think Christian's going to make some big plays in this game. I think this could be the game where we've talked about. He's been close a couple times. I think this is a game where he makes some truly game-changing plays beyond just being sticky in coverage, which he's been the last couple of weeks. I think Christian makes some big-time plays in this game. So he almost got one against Pitt when he undercut that over route. I think he's going to get So that's how I say.
I like it, man. Yeah, I like it. Before we wrap this segment up here, Brian, any final concerns or anything that's, you know, do you have a biggest concern for this game?
That this team isn't focused. I mean, that's really the only thing I have. There's no personnel matchup that concerns me. There's no, well, you know, Stanford's really good here, and there's nothing like that. Is this team focused? Are this team locked in? Is this team ready to play their game? If Notre Dame plays their game, they will win by 50. I mean, they're just that kind of team right now. If they're not focused, then this will be a lot like the other games where they'll win convincingly, but it'll be like 56-24, 45-21, something like that. That's what it'll be. So
you and I,
that's my concern.
You and I see that the exact same.
Yeah.
The exact
and
same.
Then before we move on to the rooting guide, Trev, I did want to get to some of the super chats here real quick. And I wanted to get this one up first from Jim Haller. And Jim with the super chat. Jim, thank you so much. He goes, in honor and memory of Trevor's Nana Nancy. Jim, that's awesome, bro.
Appreciate you, Jim. Yeah, appreciate you. Been a rough last couple 36 hours, but I appreciate you. I really do. Super chat from Lou Holtz, Thunder and Bolts. Listen to Pate. He kept going on about needing parameters as if they don't exist. Shake my head. This whole college football playoff rankings discourse is tiring. Play mad, boys.
I don't know what he said. I just know the whining he's done on Twitter. It's a bad look. The few things that I have seen, it's basically Josh knows the majority of his offense is SEC fan, or his viewership is SEC fans, and he's just playing to that audience. That's the only thing I could think of. Because all the arguments he's using against Notre Dame now are the ones he was trying to use in favor of SEC teams last year. Basically, like, so what he was saying, the things he's refusing to accept this year are the things he was using last year to pump up SEC teams, is the point I'm trying to make. You guys did all this crying for, we want, strength of record and game control, and we want to be rewarded for losing to really good teams, and all that stuff is exactly what's pumping up Notre Dame this year. So now you don't get to then be like, well, we didn't think it was going to apply to other teams other than the SEC, and you're crying about it. So it's been frustrating. I expected more from him. I expect a lot more from him. You had a choice to either play to the rage and make a lot of money, or educate people and be one to not make as much money. And some people are going with the play into the rage and make more money.
From Dis 6900, thank you for the super chat. I do not like Narduzzi, but hail Pitt this week. Just quiet all these crybaby Miami fans already. Yep. Have a great Thanksgiving, guys. Go Irish.
I've so been. This is a great one. I appreciate the super chat. Trev and I talked about this on the phone earlier, and he's been here for a while, and I'm finally around to that. I very much, Trev, you've been in the. I want to play Miami again. That's where I've been. I want a rematch. I want Miami in the playoffs. I want another crack at them. I mean, Notre Dame played like poo and still almost beat them. Still had the ball in the fourth quarter. And if you don't have, they were on that last drive, they were missing 2 starting offensive linemen on that last drive. Knapp wasn't playing on the last drive. If I've said this point, we broke this play down. If on the first sack, if they protect CJ Carr, Jaden Greathouse is about to catch a ball with room to run across midfield. And it just didn't work out that way. Miami won the game. Miami outplayed Notre Dame. This is a very different Notre Dame team. I would love another crack at Miami, but their whining is so bad. And the whining from people like Ari, I'd unfollow him. Like, I followed Ari for a while, but his whining has gotten so bad, and his arguments are just so shallow. Like, dude, anybody could write, any butthurt fan of Miami could have wrote the article you wrote. Like, seriously, Miami is the biggest injustice, more than 13-0 Florida State getting bumped down. Really, dude? Don't lose to SMU and Louisville. It's a real simple solution. But, it's, again, all these guys, Josh does not work for On3. Josh Pate doesn't work for On3, but he's now affiliated with them. He does, Ari Wasserman works for On3. All these people acting like just crybabies, most of them work for On3 because it's all about clicks. That's what On3's entire model is about. Clicks, 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 clicks. Play into the rage. That's why, sad, most of the places that you're finding good analysis right now are at NBC and ESPN. There's crybabies at ESPN, but Joey Galloway and Kirk Herbstreit have had some of the best responses for why Notre Dame is where they are. And Nicole Auerbach's been saying that. We heard Beanie Wells on CBS Sports the other day make that same argument. Like, look, you don't want to play this team. Nobody wants to play this team right now. Talking about Notre Dame. But that's just in real analysis and just playing to people's emotions, playing to people's lowest common denominator. And I don't like that very much. But I'm at the point now where I just want them to get smacked by Pitt this weekend. I don't know that they will. Yeah. I'm not saying they will. I'm at the point now where it's like, dude, you don't even belong in the conversation. Like, you couldn't even be Pitt. So I'm at that. I'm with you on that now, Trev. I really am.
Super chat from AST12321. Appreciate the super chat. Miami fans have never seen a team that didn't peak in September, so it isn't surprising they think Notre Dame is still the same team they barely beat.
I get that, but I do think that, Carson, the offense for Miami's been playing better the last few games. You can't deny that. Carson Beck's playing good football the last 3 games. I think the committee chair was correct in saying that. Carson's been over 10 yards per attempt his last 3 games. That's good. Now it's against Syracuse, NC State, and Virginia Tech. 3 of the worst pass defenses in college football. Matter of fact, actually, let's go look that up. It's Syracuse is ranked 114th. Virginia Tech ranks, let's see here, 81st. And then who would I say the other one was? NC State, right? They rank 136th, dead last in college football. Ooh. So, yeah, it's a lot easier to look good when you're playing literally 3 of the worst pass defenses in college football.
Yeah, the biggest lapses with Miami down the stretch and in their 2 losses have been their defense. Their offense, it's been productive. They can move the football. Malachi Toney is playing like one of the better wide receivers in college football. I'll give a player flat.
Not just freshmen, just receivers, period.
Yeah, flat out. The thing with Miami's defense is for so long, everybody hung their hats on it was just one of the best defenses in college football. It's like, okay, well, like let's start looking at the numbers. Virginia Tech went for, I think, over 200 rushing yards on that defense. You know, I mean, we're talking about, like, everybody talks about Miami's defensive line. I've been one of those guys. I've said for
Syracuse rushed for 161 against them, Trev.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's, you know,
Virginia Tech went for 194. They had a sack at the end of the game that dropped them under 200.
Gotcha. But
a couple sacks late in the game that dropped them. Yeah.
Throughout this regular season, I talked about the level of opponents that Notre Dame's offensive line was going to face. It's like they don't have a Reuben Bain, they don't have an Akeem Mesidor. Well, you go and you look at some of the numbers, and something that I think Miami fans aren't really going to want to admit is Notre Dame's defensive line and defense have been more productive getting after the quarterback than Miami's. Just flat out.
So I did the numbers on this. Notre Dame has 20 more pressures, but Notre Dame's also faced more dropbacks. But if you look at the success per dropback, Miami's at 60.3%, Notre Dame's at 60.6%. And if you look at Notre Dame was not getting after the quarterback the first 4 games of the season. If you look at their success rate the last 7 games, it's way beyond Miami's. But you don't just drop 4 games because they don't fit your narrative. Totally. You add it all together. But even with those 4 games where the defense was not as aggressive as it is now, even if you count those games, Notre Dame has still a better success rate when it comes to pressures. And better success rate in the 2 common opponents they've played too.
So a lot of the holes. Yeah, a lot of the holes on Miami's defense that we talked about in week 1 that we wanted Notre Dame to take advantage of, those are starting to rear its head again. The secondary, in my opinion, is not as good as what it was made out to be. I mean, CJ Carn's first start went for over 200 yards as a redshirt freshman on the road. It's just so their defensive lapses have kind of put that at a spot.
If you look at the 2 teams they've played, Notre Dame has had 52 pressures against Syracuse and NC State, and Miami had 45. And if you look at the success rate, Notre Dame was at 65%, Miami was at 61.6. So even the 2 common opponents. Now, did Miami kick D-line kick Notre Dame's butt in the opener? Absolutely.
Sure did.
But we haven't seen them do that since then. What they do against SMU, they allowed Kevin Jennings to throw for almost 400 yards. That's why you lost.
Super chat, Lou Holtz, Thunder and Bolts. Appreciate the super chat. Who in the top 15 is most likely to go down on Saturday?
Well, appreciate the super chat. We will get into that in these next couple segments. So I'm going to save that for the next couple segments, but I do appreciate your super chat.
And then another one from Lou. Thank you for the super chat. Not as much talk about IU this season, but that program turnaround is actually impressive. What explains it? Are they a championship contender?
I think they're a championship contender, but they're not in my top 5 teams. They may be my top 5 teams, but they're at the bottom of my top 5 as far as teams that have a shot to win it. Indiana, Trev and I were talking about this last night too. Indiana is a legitimately good football team this year, legitimately a top 5 to 6 football team this year. I think some holes have been exposed in their offense and defense here in November, but they still find ways to win, and that's the mark of a good team. They're a much better football team this year than they were last. They're a much more complete football team this year than they were last year. I think what explains it, great coaching, great development, cohesiveness. Now you say, how can you have cohesiveness in a staff that's been together for 2 years? Because almost this entire staff came with Signetti from JMU. His D coordinators from there, I think wasn't Mike Shanahan also with him at JMU, I believe, his OC, I think was also with him at JMU. I mean, his stud linebacker came with from JMU. There's one of their stud DBs came with from JMU. Elijah Surratt came with them from JMU. And so you had you brought a culture with you, and you brought players with you that could help establish that culture. And you went out and found the right players that fit into that culture from the portal in both years. I mean, that culture is about blue collar toughness, taking coaching, being a guy that's willing to go into a street fight anywhere, any place. So what do? You go out and get Pat Coogan from Notre Dame, right? Not the most talented guy in the world, not the most athletic, won't be a high draft pick, but that kid will fight you for 60 minutes. He will fight you until he can't fight anymore, till he can't, you know what I mean? He's going to be an emotional leader. He's going to be a physical kid. He's going to be a tough kid. He also is coached by one of the best O-line coaches in the business, and Bob Bostad. So he surrounded himself with great coaches. They went out and found the right players. And they're not just winning because they have a bunch of really good try-hard kids. They're legit good football players. That's why I called them last year, and I think a lot of people took it as an insult. I didn't mean it that way. They're a group of 5 all-star team. I meant that as a compliment. Like, there's a lot of NFL players at the G5 level. He got a lot of the best of them to come with him to Indiana. And those guys will be NFL football players. And so I think they've done a great job there. And I think the win over Oregon, as we talked about at the time, was the one win that showed, like, okay, they're legit, because that was not a fluky win. If anything, Mendoza's pick in the late in the game is what kept it from being a blowout. I mean, they outplayed it. I mean, it was close-ish early, and then Indiana completely put them away. Penn State win. Everybody looks at the Penn State loss like, oh, that's embarrassing. Penn State sucks. I'm like, yeah, Penn State's not a good team, but Penn State's talented. And that game, they were playing like the Penn State team we thought they were going to be when the season started. And Indiana's found a way to win. And that's the mark of a good team, that you can win ugly. They're not all going to be 40 points. Because if you win every game by 30, 40 points, it means you played nobody. You need some of those wins. Like the USC game for Notre Dame, 10-point win. It was not always pretty, but they showed they could win ugly. And I think that's important.
Yeah, I do too, man. I mean, there's a lot of similarities between this IU team and like Notre Dame in 2018. I think that they're built relatively similarly. They're good in the trenches. Offensively, they have a decent run game. Like, once Dexter came back in 18 for Notre Dame, their run game really started to turn around. I think Roman Hemby and the Kalon Black kid is a good running back duo in the backfield. Mm-hmm. Ian Book and Fernando Mendoza are having relatively similar seasons. You have Omar Cooper Jr. and Elijah Surratt. That Notre Dame team had Miles Boykin and Chase Claypool. Defensively, they're headlined by a lot of really good, experienced players. I mean, you got Tavon Coney in Notre Dame in 18, Aiden Fisher for IU this year. Julian Love was kind of like their version of D'Angelo Pons. Like, there's a lot of similarities. Now, I agree with you that it's been impressive. I think that they are a championship contender, but I'm also willing to concede that I think that there are better teams than them as well. Mm-hmm. But they're in the mix. But a lot of similarities between that Notre Dame 18 team and this IU 25 team, in my opinion. And that's a compliment. I'm not saying that to be a bad thing.
I would say this. If you were to ask me right now who the 5 best teams in college football are right now, throw out resume, just who the best teams are right now. I'm going to go Ohio State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Indiana, and Oregon. Texas Tech. Texas Tech. I think Oregon is arguing to be in the conversation, but I still don't know that they've answered the questions that existed that got them beat by Indiana. I don't think beating Iowa showed me a little something about that team, but I don't know that it showed me you're better than Indiana. But Oregon is they're 6 on my list. I think those are the 5 best teams in college football. Take resume out. Ohio State, Notre Dame. This is my order too. Georgia, Indiana, and Texas Tech. You could argue that you should flip Indiana and Texas Tech. I think that I still have a little bit more faith in Indiana's offense than I do Texas Tech's offense. That's the difference for me. If you can stop Texas Tech's run game, they're not as good. If you shut Indiana's run game down, they can still beat you. And that's the difference for me. And they both have very good defenses.
Where does A&M rank in that for you? Just out of curiosity.
Next after Oregon. Yeah. A&M's A&M deserves to be number 3. But they have more, I'll say this, they have more flaws than anybody else we're talking about here. Like that 30-3 falling behind to South Carolina 30-3 was a statement. Like they beat up Missouri team. I mean, they put LSU away, but they had a lot of bad mistakes early in that game that allowed LSU to stay in that football game. So I think A&M has some holes for me. Because, again, I'm saying take resume out of the equation. Now, if we're doing a resume ranking, A&M's 3rd, if not 2nd. Like based on resume. They deserve to be in the top 3. They just still have more holes, and especially without Le'Veon Moss. He's very different, and they just haven't played anybody that's been able to hurt them. That's I mean, they've had a lot of ugly wins. I mean, barely beat Arkansas, which, I mean, that's not too much of a knock because almost everybody barely beats Arkansas. They were in a battle with Auburn, was not South Carolina. They've had a lot more of those type of games than I would want from a team at the top. Like, I think Indiana's undefeated. I don't think Indiana's undefeated if they had A&M's schedule, because I don't know that they beat Notre Dame, but I just think that they might have. I think there's a lot of the top teams in college football that could have beat Notre Dame in week 3, game 2. But that's not the Notre Dame team that we are now. And what I don't mean is they've gotten better. I mean, they are literally doing a lot of different things now than they were then. I don't care what Chris Ash says at his press conferences. This is not the same defense, like not even close. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, totally fair. I was just curious see where, I guess, the power rankings are, the Driscoll power rankings. I like
Yeah,
those.
I mean, it's just you've got to be willing to say, okay, this is who I think the best are, but then be willing to say, but that's not what I think the ranking should be for the college football playoff.
Totally.
Like Notre Dame doesn't deserve to be ranked ahead of Texas A&M in the college football playoff. What head to head. I mean, look, difference is I actually think Miami outplayed Notre Dame more than Texas A&M did. The difference is they didn't go lose to 2 mid-level SEC teams.
Yeah.
Like they didn't lose to Missouri. They didn't lose to Florida or Mississippi. Like losing to Mississippi State's the equivalent of losing to Louisville. But they beat Mississippi State 31-9, where Miami lost to that team. Losing to SMU would be the equivalent of them losing at Missouri, but they didn't. They won 38-17. Like that's the equivalent to what Miami lost to. So, like, that's the issue with Miami. If Miami plays their A game, they can beat a lot of people, but that's the problem with Miami is you don't know if you're going to get your A game from week to week. If Miami plays their A game, Pitt has no chance this weekend. None. Say, well, don't you think Miami will be motivated knowing what's on the line? I thought the same thing going into the Syracuse game last year.
You're not wrong.
Same thing going in the Georgia Tech game last year. Both in November. You just don't know what you're going to get from Miami. That's the problem. And the chair said it like if people would actually listen with their ears and brains and not their feelings and their mouths, the committee chair actually laid it out really well last night. Like, look, I don't know what this team is going to be from week to week. Notre Dame's season started off rough, but like for the last 9 games, we know exactly what we're going to get from Notre Dame. Dominance. They laid it out.
Well said. Well said. Folks, that's going to do it for part. Oh, sorry. One more super chat. Thank you, Lou. We've known this team has the talent to beat anyone. Most of the year they've played like they know. Most of the year they've played like they know it. Recently, they're playing like they believe it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. I think another way of putting it for me is they're playing like they realize that they have to show it. Right? Like they knew they were good. I think they believed they were good. I don't think they knew what it took to actually go show it. And now I think they do. That's the difference.
Well said. That'll do it for part 2 of today's show. But don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to talk about Notre Dame's rooting guide for this weekend. Then we're diving into a preview of the Friday games of rivalry weekend. But before we get there, hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know whenever we go live. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we would greatly, greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in part 3 of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, we are talking about Notre Dame's rooting guide for this weekend. And there's a lot of action in college football. And yes, while I am still and while Brian is still confident that Notre Dame does make the playoffs, there is still a little bit of scoreboard watching and things that will either help Notre Dame's resume or kind of ding Notre Dame's resume, depending on what happens this weekend. Like we've done here the last couple of weeks, we're going to start with Notre Dame's opponents, and then we're going to talk about games at a national level. And then part 4 of today's show, we're going to wrap all that up and preview 3 games that are happening on Friday in rivalry week. You weren't kidding. That's a tongue twister. And I could not say it 5 times in a row, even if I wanted to. But, Brian, let's talk about some of the Notre Dame opponent games. And thankfully, it is holiday weekend and holiday week, and so there's going to be college football on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And the first game that's going to impact Notre Dame's resume Navy, the midshipmen, travel to play Memphis, 7:30 p.m. on ESPN. Right now, Memphis is favored by 4.5 points. The over-under is set at 57.5 on FanDuel.
Yeah, this is a big one, obviously, for Notre Dame. Navy still has an opportunity to play in the AAC championship. They need some things to kind of go their way. And this is obviously one of them. They've got to win. If they don't beat Memphis, then they're out of the conversation. So, when you look at, I would say I would put a couple things in with this one as far as a rooting guide. But first and foremost, just Navy getting to 9-2 helps Notre Dame. I mean, it does. Navy getting to 9-2 and beating a good 8-3 Memphis team on the road, a Memphis team that has a win over an SEC team, that helps Notre Dame's resume. That helps their strength of schedule, just flat out. End of sentence, end of story. If Navy loses, it hurts Notre Dame's strength of schedule a little bit, but not a ton. So it's not like it's oh crap, your playoff hopes are hanging on Navy beating Memphis. But it helps, and every little bit helps. But even more so, what you want to happen is you want Navy to win and beat Memphis. And then the other thing that you want to happen is you want there to be a little bit of chaos in the American. You want one of two things to happen. You either want Temple to beat North Texas at North Texas, now that their coach is leaving, or you want Charlotte to beat Tulane at Tulane. The game to watch is the Temple and North Texas one. Charlotte ain't beating Tulane. I'm sorry, it ain't happening.
No.
But you hope Temple's a scrappy team, and Casey Keeler's done a pretty solid job there this year, and they've got a couple good wins on their resume. They got some help last week. East Carolina lost last week, which knocked one of those teams out. And if Navy, Tulane, and North Texas all tie, I think that Navy is out. Because they would have, that right now, let me just pull it up and see if I can pull this up. So basically what Navy needs to happen let me see if I can find it. So let me find the American. So North Texas has the head-to-head tiebreaker over Navy. After head-to-head, the first tiebreaker is CFB ranking, and only Tulane has it in the last week. And so if they end up adding a second team in there, it would be North Texas, not Navy. The next tiebreaker after CFP ranking is composite of various computer rankings with 1 week still to go. That composite currently puts the teams in the following pecking order: North Texas, South Florida, Tulane, and Navy. So every one of the tiebreakers is going against Navy, so they need one of those two teams to lose.
Makes sense.
And it doesn't matter which one. The only way the North Texas tiebreaker mattered is if North Texas and Navy were tied for 2. There's only 3 one-loss teams left. If one of those two teams loses, it's Navy and whoever else. And the odds of Charlotte upsetting Tulane are not strong. So it'll be tough. It'll be tough. But hey, you can always root for it to happen.
You can. You can always root for it to happen. Next game that we're going to be rooting for, we're taking a trip over to Friday night. Boise State is on the road against Utah State, 4:30 on CBS. The Broncos are favored by 3.5 points. The over-under is set at 55.5. Boise State Broncos fans this weekend, Brian. Is this just simply put forward just the resume? The way that I look at this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, regardless of whether they win or lose, this will still be viewed as just a quality win. Boise State beating Utah State won't then jump them into the top 25.
No.
So it would stay a quality win. It would just look a little better if they beat Utah State.
And it would help the overall strength of schedule metric a little bit if they jump up to 4-0 or 8-4. Yeah.
Cool.
That's it. That's all. Don't need to spend a lot of time on that one. Right
on. Well, let's dive into the Saturday slate. And this one is a big one. First one, number 12, Miami on the road against number 22, Pitt. You can watch that on ABC at noon. Currently, the Hurricanes are favored by 6.5 points. The over-under is set at 49.5 by our friends over at FanDuel.
Yeah, this is what are your thoughts on this one, Trevor? I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I'm going to allow you to go first. I always dominate this conversation. I want to let somebody else kind of have this because I have a lot to say about this one.
Yeah, man. First and foremost, we can just get the obvious out of the way. A win here for Pitt would do wonders for Notre Dame.
Correct.
First and foremost, these are like opponents for Notre Dame and Miami. We already know what happened with NC State. I think Miami beat them by 5 more points than what Notre Dame did. Then we obviously have the Syracuse game to compare. Miami won by 28. Notre Dame won by 63. And then a couple weeks ago, Notre Dame beat Pitt by 22, really 28 points, but it was in actuality 22 points. And they played at Pitt. And so that's another common piece to this is Miami is also playing in Pittsburgh. And a win here for the Panthers would be huge for them. Would also be huge for Notre Dame's resume. I believe this is going to be one of the games that we take an actual like deep dive into. No, excuse me. We're doing that right now. So number 12.
Yeah, Vince
you guys are doing that Friday.
Friday, correct. But so on any of these games that you won't be previewing on our Friday show, feel free to give your prediction, give a little bit more into it if you'd like in these, because you and I are going to focus on the Friday games.
Right on.
But so basically, it's like, do you want Notre Dame's resume to be boosted by one of their quality wins, or do you want it to be boosted by one of their quality losses? And just looking at it, the bare minimum, Pitt winning helps boost one of their quality wins, and that's more important. And Miami's still going to be ranked, so you're going to still have a quality loss, but you're now going to have that second really quality win, and Pitt jumps into the top 20. Now you have 2 top 20 wins. That's good for the resume. Also, it drops out a team that some people think is in contention with Notre Dame. I don't feel that way. I don't. I mean, I think the committee made it very clear last night. The only thing that you don't want to happen in this game is you don't want Miami to beat Pitt way more convincingly than Notre Dame did. That's the only thing that I think couldn't – like if they go out and beat Pitt by 40, in like a legit 40, not like they piled 24 points on in the fourth quarter with some things that go their way. Like legitimately like pound Pitt. That could be a thing that the committee looks at and says, listen, we saw these two teams play this team 2 weeks apart, and Miami was way better in that game than Notre Dame. But what does that look like? The committee's going to view that as a 37-9 game, basically. Let's be honest about that. So if Notre Dame wins by 22 and Pitt wins by 29 because Miami pours a touchdown off the end of the game, I don't think that moves the needle, because they're going to be like, garbage touchdowns don't matter. It was a 22-point game for you, and it was a 28-point game for them. Like, I don't think that will matter as much. That's all that you need to have happen. Now, if it's a 4-quarter game and Miami wins in a close 4-quarter game, that helps Notre Dame. That shuts up any of the conversation about, it won't shut up Miami fans because they're going to be like head-to-head because that's all we got. Like I put a graphic out today that had 17 things, and the guy's like, you're just picking and choosing criteria that works for Notre Dame. No, I literally put every bit of criteria that the committee looks at. Like, I'm sorry that hurt you. I'm not picking and choosing anything. I'm literally putting all the criteria that the committee looks at and saying, now look at it. I think Notre Dame has the advantage in like 11. Pitt and Miami has the advantage in like 6. Miami head-to-head is big, but all the other advantages for Miami are like minute. They're 6, Notre Dame's 8 kind of thing, but Notre Dame dominates Miami in a bunch of categories. And they just, but head-to-head, okay, but head-to-head, it's one thing. And I'll pull this up right here from Ant VR. He says, I think the CFB professor analysis you retweeted, BD, is super informative. I actually feel a lot better about Notre Dame's outlook after reading. That's where a lot of my data comes from, because he actually, unlike a lot of these clickbait people, this is Adam McClintock. If you guys are not subscribed to him on Twitter, do so. And if you have the extra change in your pocket to sign up for his membership, around this time of the year, do so. But he uses the computer formula. He uses the formulas that the committee looks at. So when he does strength of schedule, he literally takes the committee's formula that they stated in 2014 and haven't changed. He looks at their strength of record, their game control, all those things that the committee looks at. He takes in their criteria, their data, not. And by the way, Adam McClintock is got his own Substack thing. If you're not on Twitter, you can go find his page. Actually, let me pull it up here real quick, because I like shouting out people that do good work, and Adam does good work. So I'm actually going to pull up his page real quick, his Substack, and I'll actually put it, for those of you that aren't on Twitter, I'll actually put a link to his Patreon page here in the thing, so you don't have to go try to find it on Twitter. So let me give that to you. It's right there. So there you go. So it's Adam McClintock. So I just put a link to his Patreon page. So if you're not on Twitter, don't find him on Twitter. That's his Patreon page. But they actually look at the committee's data. They have a formula that they pump all the data in, and they get out what the committee's looking at. And they've nailed the rankings every week. They nailed Notre Dame being ahead of Alabama. And just like they've nailed it all because he actually looks at what the committee looks at. So really good stuff there. But, I just think there's not a lot of things that Miami has going for them in the matchup against Notre Dame, except potentially a dominant win over Miami. But if it's a close 4-quarter game, it's not going to do it. It's not going to do it. So if you're a Miami fan, let's just have this conversation real quick. Go ahead. Did you have something else you wanted to add to this game?
No,
so
I
if
think
you're
I
Notre
was
Dame
just
fan, Miami winning is the ideal thing.
Yeah.
I mean, Pitt winning is the ideal thing. I don't care if it's by a point. Now, for my own personal feels, I would love it if Pitt beats Miami the way that they beat Georgia Tech last week. That would make me feel so much better. But at the end of the day, I don't care if it's a 10-9 game and they kick it at the end of the game. I don't care. Just win the game. But at the end of the day, if it's just a close game for 4 quarters, that's all that Notre Dame really needs. But if you're a Miami fan, and this is the point I tried to make, and shockingly, the point went way over their heads because they're just emotional and have no ability to reason whatsoever. You should be more mad about being ranked behind Alabama than you should be Notre Dame. The problem for Miami fans, here's really ultimately why they have a problem with the data I put out. Because they can't comprehend beyond the basic stuff. They can't comprehend beyond head-to-head. They have no ability to reason beyond head-to-head. But if you look at the data, Miami does not match up well with Alabama in top 25 wins or quality wins. But their game control is better than Alabama's. If you look at offensive metrics, they split 2-2 with Alabama. Alabama has the edge in relative scoring offense, relative total offense. But Miami has a pretty significant advantage in points per play and points per yard. If you look at defense, Miami's ahead of Alabama in all 4 defensive categories, 6-12, 5-10, 7-21, and 8-21. So close in 2 of them, the relative scoring and relative offense, they're close. Actually, let me just pull this up, Trev. I'm just probably make it a lot easier for people to look at if I just pull the stupid thing up, wouldn't it? All right, so this is the graphic I put together. This is all the committee's data. All of this is committee data. So if you look at this, this is what I was talking about down here. Defensively, so offensively, Bama has the edge in these 2 categories. And then Miami has the edge in these 2 categories. This is relative scoring offense, relative total offense, points per play, points per yard. Miami has the edge in those, and it's close. Defensively, down here, relative scoring and relative total, Miami is ahead, but they're both very good. But down here at points per play and points per yard, Miami is significantly ahead. Then you get down here, relative scoring differential, Miami's ahead of Alabama. And then average starting field position, Miami's way ahead of Alabama. So if you look at all these metrics, Alabama has the edge in top 25 wins and quality wins. They have the advantage in strength of schedule, strength of record. Miami has the edge in game control. Bama has 2 advantages on offense. Miami has 3. So now we're 6-3. Then you get the defense, and this is where it changes. The game changes. So it's 6-3 at Bama advantage. Then you get the defense. Miami has all 4 categories. Now it's 7-6. Then you get the relative scoring and average starting field position. Now all of a sudden, Miami has the edge in 3 more categories than Bama does. If they were willing to take 5 minutes to be objective and intellectually honest and have any intellectual curiosity whatsoever and say, okay, this is what Driscoll's saying is true of what the committee looks at. We don't have to pass Notre Dame to get in the playoffs, morons. You just have to pass Bama. And you have a way better case than you do because in the matchups we talk, and then there is no head-to-head. In the Notre Dame advantage, Notre Dame has more top 25 wins. They have better losses. Miami has better losses than Alabama, I would argue, because one of Miami's losses is number 20-something, and Bama lost to number 8. It's a slight advantage, but I'm sorry. Louisville's a way better loss than frickin' Florida State, a team that Miami beat. And so Notre Dame has the advantage over Miami in top 25 wins. Miami has the advantage in head-to-head. Notre Dame has the advantage in quality wins. Notre Dame has a better strength of schedule, strength of record, game control. They're ahead in all 4 offensive categories. So now we're talking 9-1. Bama has the edge in all four, Miami has the edge in all four defensive categories. So now we're talking 9-5. And then Notre Dame has and those are all minor advantages, by the way, 7-6, 9-5, 9-7, 11-8. And then Notre Dame has the better relative scoring differential and the average bet in its starting field position differential. So that's a Notre Dame 11, Miami 5. You know what I mean? Like, you have more than Bama. If you were smart, that's the argument you'd be making. If the ACC didn't have morons in their leadership position, they'd have spent the last 2 weeks comparing Miami's resume to Alabama's using real committee metrics, not the superficial head-to-head top 25 wins, because the SEC is always going to have more top 25 wins because there's an SEC bias that puts more teams in the top 25. But all those other data points below that are all advantage Miami. And if you guys weren't such babies, you'd look at this data instead of saying, yeah, but head to head, and be like, dude, actually make a real computer model argument, a real committee criteria argument. And you could say, we should be ahead of Alabama. And now you're in the playoffs, you bunch of crybabies. But you're not willing to go past the surface level because either A, you're lazy, or B, you're smart, or C, all of the above. And you're incapable of understanding what the committee actually looks at. So it's just, it's frustrating, to be honest with you, Trevor. It's very frustrating. And then you compare Notre Dame and Alabama, and it's not close. Alabama has more top 25 wins. Notre Dame has the same number of quality wins. Alabama has a better strength of schedule. Alabama has a better strength of record. Notre Dame has a better game control. Notre Dame has the advantage in all four offensive categories over Alabama. Oh, excuse me, 3 of the 4 categories. Then you get the defense, and Notre Dame is ahead in all 4. That's 8-4. And then Notre Dame has a big advantage in the other 2. Notre Dame's like 10-4 over Alabama with a tie in total quality wins. Not even close. Like, if you actually look at the data, it's not even close. Matter of fact, if you look at the data, Miami has a better case to be ranked closer to Notre Dame than Alabama does.
Sure.
Because you include the head-to-head. And the quality wins is any team that's over 5. Any FBS team that's over 500 is how they look at it. Now, the other thing that Bama and Miami fans aren't taking into consideration is, according to the committee, Notre Dame is 9-2. Alabama and Miami are 8-2 because they don't count FCS wins. That's the other thing. You don't have as many wins as Notre Dame does, nor will you. So, but I didn't want to put 8-2 on there, and that would just cause people to lose their minds, and they wouldn't look at anything else. So that's what that stands for. But that's not Brian Driscoll's data. That's not Adam McClintock's data. That's Adam and John Bryce looking at what the committee is looking at, and then me taking that as a fact and just dealing with the reality of it. That's why I no longer argue that Notre Dame should be ahead of Oregon. You guys remember when the playoffs first came out, and I argued that Notre Dame should be ahead of Oregon, and I said, nope, not going to do that anymore. Why? Because of this right here. Let me pull this up here real quick. Let me go zoom to fit. Let's go here. Look at Oregon. So Notre Dame has the edge in top 25 wins and quality wins. Actually, that's not the metric. Let's go to resume 2. This is the one I wanted to pull up. But if you look at it and you compare Oregon to Notre Dame, Oregon has the edge in a lot of categories, right? I mean, they're ahead of all the, some of the computers. Notre Dame's higher in the FEI, or Oregon's higher in the FEI, Notre Dame's in the FBI. Notre Dame's higher in the Sagarin. Oregon's higher in the SP Plus. Oregon's higher in the Massey. Oregon has a better, 2 better offensive categories. Notre Dame has 2 better offensive categories. Defensively, Oregon has an advantage of 2. Notre Dame has the advantage of 2. So, it's real close when you look at those metrics. But then I go up to their 10-1, Notre Dame's 9-2, and their only loss was to a top 5 team. They beat the Miami version of who they played. You know what I mean? In Iowa and USC. Pick one. So you don't hear me make that argument anymore. Why? Because I looked at the numbers. I looked at the data. That's why. Why don't I make the argument about Oklahoma that I do Alabama? Look at the strength of schedule number. See, Alabama is they have the number 27 strength of schedule compared to Notre Dame's 44, But if you look at Oklahoma's strength of schedule, it's 12th. So, like, they have more advantages over Notre Dame than Alabama does, even though I think if they played on a Saturday, I think Notre Dame beat the heck out of them. So I think all of those things to me say you have to be willing to look at the data and have an honest conversation about what the data shows you. That's why I don't sit here and say I think Notre Dame should be ahead of Oregon and Ole Miss and Oklahoma right now. I'm not making that case. I would put Notre Dame ahead of Oklahoma, but I'm not arguing about it. Why? Because I'm looking at the metrics the committee's looking at, and based on those metrics, you can understand why Notre Dame is behind those teams. But there's not much of a case to make for Alabama or Miami other than the head-to-head, which matters. But for Miami fans, they talk, well, why do we even play those games? Like, you guys are not making the point you think you're making. If you take you're mad at your 12 now, your entire resume is built on beating Notre Dame. You take Notre Dame off your schedule and go beat somebody that's not good, you're down past Michigan. You're down 16, 17, 18 right now because you have 0 top 25 wins. Your best win right now would be South Florida, who has 2 losses in the American. So I just wish people would just not be idiots and just take a minute, just take a breath, look at the data, and have a better understanding of the data. And here's a real cool thing: don't lose to Louisville, and if you're Alabama, don't get beat by Florida State, who sucks. It's real simple. Real simple. But anyway, So if you're Miami, you should be saying War Eagle this weekend and stop crying about Notre Dame. Number one, hope you can beat Pitt. Number one. Number two, War Eagle and go Tigers. That's what you should be saying. Is you want Oklahoma or you want Alabama to lose. And you better hope that Texas Tech wins the Big 12. So this is the thing. There's a lot of paths for Miami to make the playoffs that don't include crying about Notre Dame and trying to convince the committee to change their minds on something that they've been adamant about for now 4 weeks. So yeah,
it's well said, man. That's extremely well said. Before we move on to the next game, I do want to give my prediction for this one just real quick, since I won't get to on Friday. So
yeah,
even though I know Miami is favored by 6.5 points by FanDuel, I have Pitt winning this one. I do. And for the simple reason of I think Carson Beck is going to throw some crucial turnovers. Now, there's been a pattern. I don't think it's a mystery that when they play a good pass defense, the defense that ranks high in interceptions, Carson Beck turns the ball over. He had 4 against Louisville. He had 2 against SMU. SMU ranks 5th in the country in interceptions gained, and Louisville ranks 19th in the country in interceptions gained. I think that the weather is going to play a factor. Not as big of a factor as I think some, like, they're not playing in a blizzard, but it is cold. And how I know that is I've watched USC teams that play in Southern California come and play Notre Dame when it's like 40, and it just looks different. Mm-hmm. It's in the same way that Notre Dame, like a handful of Notre Dame players were affected by the humidity and the weather down in South Florida when they played in week 1. So I'm also not going to pretend that also wasn't a thing. I think it was blown out of proportion. Just like I think some they're not going and playing Pitt in the Arctic Circle. It's just going to be cold.
What was blown out of proportion?
Like the weather down for Notre Dame players down in Miami. Like, it was blown out of proportion, but it was a factor.
Yeah.
Just
and you saw that with guys kind of getting a little bit gassed at the end of the game, and humidity got to them. They weren't as ready for that moment as they were last year. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but it wasn't. They didn't have to go sit in ice baths at halftime. It wasn't like in the same light that I think the way that some people talk about the weather in the Pitt Miami game, I think it's getting blown out of proportion, but it is a factor. So I Pitt winning this one in an ugly game, 24-20. Like, I
love it. I love it. So Notre Dame on the season has 267 pressures. Pitt only has 217. So Notre Dame has 50 more pressures. Having said that, Notre Dame has a combined number of 74 hits plus sacks on a quarterback. Pitt has 83. So even though Notre Dame gets to the quarterback in a pressure situation more, Pitt actually gets to the actual quarterback more. So, like, hits on the quarterback. And to your point, that's the stuff that really gets to Carson Beck. So, yeah, I agree. I think that's going to be a big thing. Can Pitt get after the quarterback? Can Jimmy Scott impact the game in a way that he did not the Notre Dame game? That's going to be a big key in this game. If he can, then I think they've got a shot to do something. He was very good against Georgia Tech. He had 6 pressures against Georgia Tech. He had 4 pressures, 2 hits, and 2 sacks in the quarterback against Stanford. They're going to also need their linebackers to be impactful. Kyle Luis had 1 pressure against Notre Dame. He did not have a very good game because he had 3 tackles, 3 missed tackles against Notre Dame. He only had 2 run stops, and he gave up 3 receptions for 28 yards. Against Georgia Tech, however, he had 5 pressures, 1 sack, 1 hit on the quarterback, 9 tackles, 2 assisted tackles, no missed tackles. So they need that version of Kyle Luis against Miami.
Well, and to your point about Pitt's linebackers, I have full faith that they're going to trigger them more than what Notre Dame did with their linebackers in week 1. So they're going to be a game-changing unit for that Pitt defense. So I have the Panthers winning 24-20.
Yeah, I would love it. So, would love that if that were true. I'll give my prediction on Friday. It's a good one.
Next game is the battle for Los Angeles. UCLA at number 17 USC. It's on NBC. It's a night game kickoff. USC is favored by 21.5 points. The over-under is set at 59.5. Is this one another one of those? It's pretty straightforward. USC win here. Yeah.
It is. You want USC to win and make sure. I think that Notre Dame got a boost when they kept USC at 17. I think that helps Notre Dame and that helps Oregon. I think that also shows like, hey guys, USC's pretty good. The teams they've lost to are pretty good. They had the bad loss to Illinois. The committee looks at context. They had half their defense didn't play in that game, and because they had food poisoning and different things, they were a very depleted team. Still almost won that game. They gave Notre Dame a game. They gave Oregon a game. They really weren't the better team in either game, but they were competitive in both games. They pounded Michigan. They had a great win over Iowa. This is still a good USC team, and I was glad the committee recognized it as such. And of course, it helps Notre Dame. But if you're USC, you can't now have that letdown game. You can't be in your feelings because you're now out of the playoff race and you're out of the Big Ten title race and all that. You can't now go out in your last game and just kind of lay an egg against UCLA.
Yeah,
can't. You've got to go out there and handle business and finish this year on a strong note. And we're going to find out if Lincoln Riley can get his team properly motivated now that there's really nothing on the line for this game, for the season. So, a loss in this game would drop USC out of the top 25. And if Miami beats Pitt, now Notre Dame is sitting there in the last week and they have no top 25 wins. That would matter. Now, the committee would still recognize that those are teams that have been in the whole year, but that would hurt.
Yeah,
that would hurt. So you need the Trojans to win. And then the last one, Trevor, UNC at NC State.
Yeah, this one I kind of feel bad for the Tar Heels. NC State has been a very volatile team at home. They kind of look like world beaters on the road. They look like they don't want to be there. And that's true when you go back and you look at what their record has been at home versus on the road. They've beaten some big opponents at home. And then they borderline just look not competitive on the road. So that's something that Dave Dorn is going to have to figure out at some point between now and whenever next season kicks off. But it pertains to this game, obviously, first and foremost, an NC State win here is going to be huge. 7:30 p.m. kickoff on the ACC network. NC State is currently favored by 7.5. Over-under is set at 47.5. If NC State wins, it's another just quality win for Notre Dame. It's plain and simple what this does for their resume. But I like the Wolfpack in this one because of what they play like at home. And North Carolina, as scrappy as they've looked at times down the stretch, I think they have a tall task in front of them on Saturday.
Agree. I mean, right now, I put up that graphic that had Notre Dame with 5 quality wins. One of those wins is 6-5 NC State. They lose this game, they're 6-6. Notre Dame's now without a quality win. Now, they still have more quality wins than Miami, Texas Tech, Oregon, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Utah, and Vandy. If they lose if NC State loses, they would still have more than Miami, Texas Tech, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Utah, and Vandy. But you're now behind Alabama, and your resume could change quite a bit. So I think that's a key is you just want them to win. And then just overall, if all your opponents have a pretty good final weekend, like, look, 2 of your opponents are going to win. One of your opponents is guaranteed to win, and one of your opponents is guaranteed to lose because BC and Syracuse play each other. The rest of them, you want your opponents to win. I mean, we're not talking about Texas and Texas A&M and Texas this weekend, because I don't think A&M losing impacts Notre Dame's resume at all. I think A&M is still a top 10 team. They'll finish the year 11-1, ranked 6th, 7th, or 8th, somewhere around there. And it's still a great win or loss for Notre Dame. What you don't want to have happen is then lose to Texas, get into the SEC title game, and then lose again. But at that point in time, A&M may fall behind Notre Dame because clearly their head-to-head win won't mean as much at that point in time. You know what I mean? So, like, it's possible that A&M could still fall behind Notre Dame. And if you are going to not give Miami credit for beating Notre Dame, you're not going to give A&M credit for beating Notre Dame, although they did on the road, because Miami was more impressive in their win over Notre Dame than A&M was, in my opinion. So, that's kind of, I just don't think it matters a whole lot on this, Trev. But if they win, that's even better for Notre Dame because they stay high. And if Pitt wins, that helps. If Boise wins, I mean, your overall strength of schedule gets a little bit of a boost if a bunch of your opponents win. And then obviously, as I mentioned, with them winning their last game, that would also mean that they would remain a 5th quality win. They're the only potential quality win that's on the brink of not being a quality win with the loss this weekend. USC will remain a quality win. Navy will remain a quality win no matter what happens their last game. Boise remains a quality win. Trying to think of what the other so it's Pitt would remain, USC would remain, Boise would remain, Navy would remain. This is the only one that's on the verge of not being a quality win if they lose. So you want NC State to win and handle business and be 7-5 and finish the year on a strong note. And all of a sudden they go up in the computer models a little bit and your overall resume gets better.
Plain and simple. Love it. Let's talk about some of the national. I know. Let's talk about some of the national games that are going to impact Notre Dame's schedule here, resume here, and a couple of them on Friday. And some of these we are going to take a deep dive and preview. But number 7, Ole Miss on the road against Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl. You can watch that at noon on ABC. Ole Miss is favored by 7.5. The over-under is 62.5.
You said the over-under for FanDuel was what? What was it on this one?
62.5.
What was and what's the line?
Ole Miss 7.5.
So they basically predict Ole Miss will win by about a touchdown in a high-scoring game. I could see that. I mean, look, right now, I don't think the committee is overly enamored with Ole Miss because of all the things going on right now, the extracurriculars. I don't think they love the idea of a Ole Miss team being in with the new head coach. I think that if you're the college football playoff committee, you're probably wanting Mississippi State to win this football game. Think about what that does. I kind of pointed out earlier Ole Miss's resume. It's not super strong. Ole Miss right now has 3 quality wins. They are 2-1 against top 25 teams. That's a positive. But Ole Miss is 10th and 4th in relative scoring and offense, but they're 21st in yards per play, 43rd in yards per play, they're 21st in points per play, 43rd in yards per point or points per yard, but they're in the 40s of all the defensive metrics. And their overall resume is not super strong. So like their field position one is they're 64th in that field position category that I was talking about earlier. Let me find this other one that I have here. The point differential one. Ole Miss is 15th in that category. So there's a lot of things that Ole Miss isn't great at that if they get a second loss, they plummet. Worse than Bama would. And then now you don't have to worry about it. Like, you don't have to worry about what happens with their coach because your resume is now not good enough. Your whole resume right now is on beating Oklahoma. And that's okay with one loss. You get a second loss, you're falling big time. And that also helps Notre Dame. That would bump Notre Dame up to number 8. And then that would give Notre Dame protection, or even if Notre Dame then gets passed up by, let's say, BYU runs the table and both BYU and Texas Tech stay ahead of them. Let's say Alabama goes and wins the SEC. They jump in. Now Notre Dame falls to 10. They're still in. So Ole Miss losing the Egg Bowl on Friday would literally solve all of the angst that Notre Dame fans have about Notre Dame getting dropped out. And then maybe now, Miami jumps in and they can stop crying and, it'd be nice, wouldn't it? So, and then I do wonder if Ole Miss gets beat by Mississippi State, that hurts Oklahoma's resume as well. Is that enough to pop Notre Dame up if Oklahoma doesn't play well? I don't think Oklahoma needs to lose on Saturday, but if they just have an ugly win, then that could do it. That could do it.
Very interesting in that one for sure. Next national game, it's also Friday night. The good old-fashioned hate rivalry. Number 4, Georgia plays Georgia Tech at a neutral site game. Georgia Tech is ranked 23rd in the country. It's at 3:30 p.m. on ABC. Georgia is 13.5-point favorites. The over-under is set at 59.5.
I'm a little torn on this one, Trevor, because I don't know if Georgia falls behind Notre Dame if they lose to Georgia Tech. But I think with Georgia Tech losing last weekend, the chances of that happening are much greater. So if you look at like the FEI, for example, Notre Dame's already ahead of Georgia. If you look at Sagarin, Notre Dame is already ahead of Georgia. If you look at the Massey ratings, which I believe is also one of the old BCS ones, Georgia's at 4, Notre Dame's at 6. They lose to Georgia Tech, a team that Massey has down at number 31. That could be enough to drop them down. I'd be very curious to see kind of how that would go. If you look at some of the other numbers that I've talked about here, you look at like relative scoring offense. Notre Dame is 8th in relative scoring offense. Georgia is, let's see here. Georgia would be, because I haven't actually compared their resumes in a couple days. So Georgia would be 17th. If you look at yards per relative offense, like yards, Notre Dame is 19th. Georgia would be 24th. If you look at the relative numbers on defense, Notre Dame is 7th. Georgia's 14th. If you look at the relative points or relative yards, Notre Dame is 9th and Georgia is 13th. So literally in all 8 of the relative scoring and all that, Notre Dame is ahead of Georgia in all of them. If you look at the field position one, or you look at the scoring differential, Notre Dame is 4th, Georgia's 9th. If you look at the FEI's field position, Notre Dame is 6th, Georgia is 28th. I just went through 10 metrics the committee uses, and Notre Dame is ahead of Georgia on all of them. So, I look at that and I'm like, if Georgia loses to a borderline top 25 team, I think that's enough for Notre Dame to go ahead of them. I do. Now, I don't think there's a snowball's chance in heck that Georgia Tech beats Georgia this weekend, but I'm just saying, if you're talking about games that happen, I think that's another game that if Georgia loses, I wasn't sure that they would fall behind Notre Dame. But when I compared their data, like, they're already behind Notre Dame in almost every computer model that I looked at. I think the only ones that have Georgia ahead, I believe, are the ESPN ones. Let me go look here. SP Plus has Notre Dame's 5, Georgia's 6. Let's look at the Football Power Index. Notre Dame is 3rd, Georgia's 6th. So, dude, yeah, Notre Dame is literally ahead of Georgia in every category except record, which is why Georgia deserves to be ahead. I mean, so this would give Georgia a second rank loss. I think when I look at Georgia's schedule, they have, let me go here real quick. So Georgia, they have win over Ole Miss, which is a very good win for them right now. They have a win over Tennessee, which would give them a top 25 win. And they have a win over Texas. So they'd be 3-2 with top 25 wins. They would have, 3. They would only have 3. They'd only have 3 quality wins. No, wait a minute, where's Marshall? That'd be 4. No, Marshall's 5 and 6. They'd only have 3 quality wins. So they have one more top 25 win than Notre Dame. They'd have fewer quality wins. So, like, literally the only metric they would have over Notre Dame if they lost is they have more wins over top 25 teams. But that's already been proven with Alabama that doesn't matter if the rest of it isn't there. So I thought that was a very interesting. When I looked at that, I was like, okay, that's pretty interesting, man. When you look at that data, like, Notre Dame kind of beats Georgia pretty soundly, but the difference is right now is the record. So let me go see what the strength of schedule difference is, because I know Georgia has a better strength of schedule than Notre Dame. Notre Dame on the metric the committee uses is, let's see here, they're 44 and Georgia is 39. So, like, where would they have the edge over Notre Dame outside of one more top 25 win? So, yeah, if Georgia loses to Georgia Tech, there's no doubt in my mind that they fall behind Notre Dame. So that'd be, I mean, if there's utter chaos this weekend, there's a chance Notre Dame could jump up to 6 or 5. I just don't think that much chaos is going to happen. Just not in 1 week. I just don't see it. But you just need like one of these, like all these games. We just need, of all the games we're going to talk about in the next 15, 20 minutes, you just need one of them to happen. That's it. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about 5 games in a row. And of all those 5 games, actually 6 out of the 7 games we're going to talk about, you just need one of them to happen.
You bump Notre Dame up, that's for sure. I mean, because as weird as it is to say, they are a spot away from hosting. I mean, I know sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but they are. They are one spot away from being able to host. And if some of these games start going that way, definitely look like it. Let's jump into the Saturday slate here. Number 5, Texas Tech is on the road at West Virginia. It's noon kickoff. Texas Tech is currently favored by 23.5 points. But the over-under is set at 53.5. So they see the Red Raiders winning this one in a big, big way, and honestly, so do I.
I agree. I think Texas Tech's going to pound West Virginia, but if West Virginia beats Texas Tech, they would fall behind Notre Dame. So if you're looking at games and your scoreboard watching, if you could ask for one colossal upset of a huge dog this weekend, that would be a pretty good one.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a pretty good one. I don't see it happening.
No, I don't either. Another one that I do.
My boy Rich Rod has helped me out before, though, man. Rich Rod has helped me out before, so we'll see. But I don't see it happening. Not this week.
Well, in a game that I could see happening this weekend, number 6 Oregon is on the road against Washington, a really, really tough team to beat at home. 3:30 p.m. on CBS. Oregon is currently favored by 6.5. The over-under is set at 50.5.
Mm-hmm. This is going to be an interesting game. What'd you say the spread was in this one, Trev?
Oregon's favored by a touchdown.
Okay, that means they think it's going to be a close game. If you look at the metrics that I've pointed to that we keep talking about, Notre Dame is ahead of Oregon in more categories than Oregon is ahead of Notre Dame right now. But Oregon has the better record. If Oregon drops another game, they will fall behind Notre Dame. We guarantee it based on their metrics. So, I'll pull that graph up again for people asking. So here's the graph. So as you see, relative scoring offense, Oregon has an advantage in those two. Notre Dame has an advantage of those two. Defensively, advantage Notre Dame, advantage Oregon, advantage Notre Dame. So it's 4-4 in those categories. If you look at the metrics I don't have on here, but you look at point differential, which the committee looks at, Notre Dame is 4th. The only 3 teams ahead of them are Indiana, Ohio State, and Texas Tech. Oregon is 6th. This is before Oregon might lose a game, right? We're talking about if Oregon – this is only if Oregon loses. If Oregon doesn't lose, the computer models are close, but Oregon's 10-1, Notre Dame's 9-2. That matters. They have a better record. And then if you look at field position value, Notre Dame is 6 and Oregon is, let's find Oregon here. They are 43rd. And then you look at the other metric, top 25 wins. Oregon has 1, Notre Dame has 2. Quality wins, Notre Dame has 5, Oregon has 4. If Oregon's is 10-2 and Notre Dame's 10-2, Notre Dame has a clear advantage in the categories here. The points, offense and defense, it's 2-2 on each side of the ball. Notre Dame has better wins. Notre Dame has better losses. And then Notre Dame would have more quality wins. Notre Dame would jump ahead of Oregon. I didn't know that. I didn't know for sure that would happen. But when you punch in these numbers and you know what the committee's looking at, and then also down there too, Trevor, you see strength of schedule. Notre Dame is ahead of Oregon already. And then, of course, strength of record. Oregon has an advantage. Game control. Oregon has an advantage. But we're talking about if they lose – at least game control, they fall behind Notre Dame. So if they lose that game, Notre Dame would have a clear edge over Oregon. Right now, Oregon has the better resume. No doubt. But if they lose, they do. And as you said, this is one that's possible. I think Oregon's a better team than Washington. I think if this game was at Oregon, I think this would be a very clear double-digit win for Oregon. But as we've pointed out time and time again, playing up in Seattle, playing the Huskies on the road is not an easy thing, Trevor. So if you're a Notre Dame fan and you want some chaos to happen, this is definitely one you want to keep your eye on. And the one thing that sucks about the 10:30 kickoff time is how late it is and all that. But the one thing that's great about it is we get to sit and watch all this football being played all day, which is going to be awesome. So, yes, you want the Huskies to get this one done.
Yeah, you sure do. I'll give a little preview into this one as well. Consider I'm not going to be previewing this one either. This is going to be a crazy game. The story of it is going to be Washington's defense at home versus Oregon's offense. I mean, Oregon has had an extremely volatile offense so far this season, and it hasn't traveled. Like that's the interesting thing about this team, man. I mean, you go and you look at what Oregon's offense has done on the road so far this year. Put up 34 against Northwestern earlier in September. Traveled on the road against Penn State. They scored 30, needed overtime to do it. They look good against Rutgers, but then in a sloppy game against Iowa, they put up 18 points of offense and needed some heroics last second to do it. And then they put up 42 in back-to-back weeks at home against Minnesota and USC. But we're talking about a Washington defense that hasn't let an opponent score over 25 points at home. And that includes playing Ohio State. Like that includes playing Illinois at home, who has a decent offense. I mean, at home, they've held their opponents to 21, 10, 24 in a loss, 19, 25, and then 13 in their last home game against Purdue. That is going to be a major storyline in this one. Washington, for whatever reason, they just don't lose at home, man. They lost once at home, I mean, in the last 3 seasons, so that's really impressive. So I'm smelling an upset here. I said this yesterday that I thought that a lot of chaos has already happened, but I don't think it's completely done. I'm taking Washington in the upset here. I think that's the most likely one this weekend.
I love this comment by Robert Bishop. Sorry, that's the wrong one. I wasn't impressed with Washington's offense. To be fair, I only watched them against Ohio State. There's a lot of teams whose offenses don't look good when they play Ohio State. You know what I mean? It's like, I think the Georgia Tech game was eye-opening for a lot of Notre Dame fans who were crapping on Pitt. We kept trying to tell people this Pitt offense is legit, and then Notre Dame embarrasses them. You're like, see, they weren't that good. And then you're like, oh, maybe it is Notre Dame. Oh, Navy sucks. You beat them with their backup quarterback, and then their backup quarterback goes in the second half against South Florida, runs for 2 touchdowns to put the game away. When South Florida kept coming back and he rushes for over 100 yards, outrushed Blake Horvath by over 100 yards. Maybe they are that good. Alex Teska ran for a bunch of yards against South Florida, couldn't do anything against Notre Dame. Eli Heidenreich went off against South Florida, couldn't do nothing against Notre Dame. Maybe it is Notre Dame. You start to realize, no, this team's pretty good. They just look bad against really good teams like Notre Dame and Ohio State and Oregon. So, yeah, I'm with you on that. But I think Jed Fish needs a big win too. I think this is the kind of game for his tenure at Washington. He's had some good wins in his tenure. Over some brand names. Obviously, they beat Michigan last year, which is a brand win, but they've also had some ugly losses. I think people forgave them last year for losing to Washington State and losing to Rutgers and losing to Iowa and losing to Indiana and losing to Oregon and losing to Louisville. It was year 1. You lost a bunch of your players. Now you're in year 2. You got a talented team, and you've lost to literally every good team you've played so far. And then that embarrassing loss to Wisconsin was bad look. But what does this team do coming out of that? They played 2 not very good teams. They annihilated Purdue and UCLA, 49-13 wins and 48-14 win. Hopefully that is what can kind of carry the day here against Oregon at home. We'll see. I'm not as optimistic about the upset as you are, but, man, I hope that you are right. But if you're a Notre Dame fan, you want the Huskies to get this one done.
Last couple national games here, Brian, on this Notre Dame rooting guide, in what is probably the most hilarious over-under that I've seen this season. LSU is on the road against number 8 Oklahoma, 3:30 p.m. kickoff on ABC. Oklahoma is favored by 10.5 points. The over-under is set at 36.5.
That is gross.
Yeah.
That is really gross. That is 36.5.
I had to go back and look because when I was filling out the outline that you sent me, I wrote it down real quick and then I was reviewing it before we got started. I was like, that's got to be a typo.
I'm actually looking it up to make that's the freaking spread. Wow.
How wild is that? Over under 36.5 in an LSU Oklahoma SEC matchup.
I mean,
That's
every
gross.
other top 25 matchup, any game involving a top 25 team, it's 50.5, 43.5, 54.5, 49.5, 47.5, 50.5, 36.5. That one, 65.5. Guess which one that one is? SEC game, Vandy, Tennessee. 53.5, 46.5, 58.5, 52.5, 52.5, and 36.5. That is gross.
Yeah.
That is gross. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
so
gross.
apparently Vegas thinks that this game is going to set offensive football back a couple of decades. But yeah, I think the interesting thing is when you look at this matchup, as shocking as the over-under is in this one, I kind of get it. In one light, you have an Oklahoma defense that's just been absolutely shut down. And then an Oklahoma offense that struggled to put points on the board, again, very similar to that Notre Dame 2012 reference. And then on the other side of the ball, you have an LSU offense that I think is just done with their season. They
quit.
Yeah.
They've quit.
Watching them against Western Kentucky, like they've quit. And it's as fun as it is to take shots at LSU, like I get it, but Western Kentucky does not have the horses to compete with LSU inside a Tiger Stadium at nighttime. Like that is a team that just does not care, flat out. Like
Trevor, Western Kentucky's giving up over 22 points a game this year. The week before the week before LSU only scored 13, they gave up 26 points to Middle Tennessee State. Middle Tennessee State's 2-9. Middle Tennessee State's averaging 21.6 points per game. They gave up 27 points to Louisiana Tech. Like, they gave up 20.5 points to FIU. I mean, like, they gave up 45 points to Toledo. LSU was closer to North Alabama than they were to Sam Houston State in scoring against Western Kentucky. That's so bad.
Yeah, that
is so terrible. But here's the thing. You know what, though? Since they fired Brian Kelly, that defense is back to playing really good defense.
Sure are.
And that's why I get it as well. Not only is Oklahoma, I mean, Oklahoma could score, one of their highest outputs of the season, and they still don't cover. I mean, Oklahoma, outside of the most points Oklahoma has scored this year against a Power 4 opponent or against an FBS opponent, period. They scored 42 against Temple, 44 against Kent State. If you look at just Power 4 opponents, the most points they've scored in the game is 33 against Tennessee. That's the only game they've been in the 30s against a Power 4 opponent. And they could have match their best output of the season against a Power 4 opponent, and they still may not get over the over because I don't know that LSU can score on Oklahoma. Having said that, Oklahoma the LSU defense has been very good since Brian Kelly was fired as well. They were starting to kind of bottom out. They gave up 31 points to Vandy, 49 to Texas A&M. They held Alabama to 20. They held Arkansas to 22, and they held Western Kentucky to 152. Now, we laugh about how embarrassing it is to only score 13 points against Western Kentucky. But that's a Western Kentucky offense that was scoring about 30 points a game coming into that game. So, I mean, they had scored 42, 35, 28 the 3 weeks prior. So, their defense is back to playing really good football. I just don't know if they're going to need some turnovers and some, points on defense to win the game. Like LSU right now reminds me a lot. We're talking about past Notre Dame teams. LSU right now reminds me of 2007 Notre Dame, but with a way better defense. Basically, like you only reason Notre Dame beat UCLA in 2007 was because of Mo Crum had like basically a defensive touchdown and another one that they recovered inside the 10. You know what I mean? Like they weren't winning that game without the defense getting them points. And that's how I feel about LSU right now. But when it comes to the rooting guide, here's where I'm at with this game. I don't think you necessarily need Oklahoma to lose, although if they do, that's huge.
Yeah.
I just think it needs to be another ugly game and then some other things break your way. I think there's a chance that Notre Dame could jump Oklahoma without Oklahoma losing. I think the metrics are close. But I think that's going to require some other thing. Pitt beats Miami. Navy beats Memphis. Like the overall resume for Notre Dame goes up. They have an ugly game against LSU. Notre Dame destroys Stanford. It might also require like Ole Miss losing, because then what you might be able to do is Oklahoma stays at 8, and then Notre Dame goes up 7. You know what I mean? Something like that. So it's possible, but if they lose, it's even better. I just don't know if that's possible. I don't know if LSU can do enough to win.
No, I don't either, unfortunately. But with sometimes college football will just college football. It goes one of two directions. The LSU football team and their players will just either throw their hands up in the air and say, like, let's just get this season over with, or they go into it with the mentality of like, hey guys, let's just go ball. It's like the season's over. We're not making the playoffs. We're not going to get ranked. I mean, even if they beat Oklahoma, they're not going to get ranked, in my opinion. So like we'll see what they do. But if it's just an ugly game, I think that's also impactful as far as the rooting guide is concerned. So I'm with you. It was just shocking to see an over-under set at 36.5. I mean, good Lord. Good Lord. Last game here, Brian, is also on Saturday for this rooting guide. Number 10, Alabama is on the road against Auburn in the Iron Bowl, traveling to Jordan-Hare Stadium. 7:30 p.m. kickoff on ABC. Alabama is currently favored by 5.5 points. The over-under is set at 46.5. A lot of Notre Dame fans will be tuned into the Iron Bowl this year.
I was shocked to see the spread was only 5.5. Shocked. Like, I was really expecting Alabama to be at least a touchdown, if not more, favorite over Auburn. But there's a couple things about Auburn, I guess, to think about. Number one is Auburn has had some good wins here down the stretch. Obviously, they destroyed Mercer last weekend. And again, we talk Mercer's an FCS team, but that's a 9-3 FCS team that I believe is in the college football playoffs, correct? Aren't they in the FCS playoffs?
Mercer? I think so.
Yeah. Thought so too. Let's go FCS. But let me go look here because they were 9-3. Where is Mercer? Or do they not make the playoffs? Or did they get a bye? Let's see here. Did Mercer not make the playoffs? Wow. Let me see here. I thought because they were 9-3. But anyway, point is, that's a good FCS team. They went 9-2 this year. They are. They play South Dakota State on. They play the winner of, I think, South Dakota State and Drake. So yeah, they did get a bye. I was like, that can't be right. Like, that's a good football team, man. Like, what is the FCS doing? Let me see. FCS football playoff bracket. Moral of the story, Trev, I've always been very consistent that if you play a really good FCS team, that's better than beating some G5 teams. It just is. And Mercer's a very good team. Mercer's 9-2, and that's with them losing to Auburn. They are the number 6 overall seed at the FCS level. They'll play the winner of the Drake South Dakota game. And then the winner of that game plays the winner of Montana and whoever wins between New Hampshire and South Dakota State. So, and they destroyed Mercer, absolutely destroyed Mercer. So that was a pretty good win for them this season. So their other win, they had another good win over Arkansas, going on the road and beating Arkansas. But then they have weird games like losing to Kentucky 10-3. They're a very weird team. Went on the road and beat Baylor by 2 touchdowns. And then they played Vandy very tough. I mean, I don't know that I would say that I necessarily felt like Vandy. I'm going to look up the box score because I might be misremembering this game, but I never felt like Auburn was going to win. But like, I mean, it took them to overtime. I just kind of felt like the whole time I'm watching it, like Auburn's going to do something to lose, but it's a weird game. Like, it went to overtime. I just felt like they're going to lose it. I think it went to overtime, didn't it? But I mean, you took them down to the wire. You played them tough. Ashton Daniels passed for a bunch of yards because you and I were talking about that game last night. Ashton Daniels threw for a bunch of yards. So it's a weird team. Auburn, you don't know what version of Auburn's going to show up. And you definitely don't know what version of Auburn's going to show up in the Iron Bowl. You know what I mean? And Bama just isn't playing good football. Like, was playing a crappy – like, here's the point. Auburn last week beat a 9-1 FCS team who's got a bye in the playoffs 62-17. Alabama beat a 3-9 FCS team 56-0. Like, Bama has not been playing well. Is it going to be enough for Auburn to beat them? I don't know. I would love for that to happen. Auburn's got a very good front. Keldrick Falk is a legit Auburn can run the football at times. Again, it's the schizophrenic nature of Auburn. They ran for, I'm actually Alabama's numbers. That's not even schizophrenic. They just suck. 277 against Mercer, 210 against Vandy, 230 against Arkansas, 307 against Baylor, then 67 against Oklahoma, 52 against Texas A&M, 118 against Kentucky. It's like, what version of this team is going to show up? If the good version shows up, they can beat Bama. They can. I just don't know if that version is going to show up. You know what I mean? But we'll talk more about it on Friday. But I would say, of all the potential upsets that we just talked about, I think the most likely, in my opinion, are Mississippi State over Ole Miss, Washington over Oregon, and Auburn over Alabama. And I don't know that I'd rank the Auburn-Alabama one last.
I get that, man. I mean, this matchup is really, really, really interesting because when we talk matchups, we're talking about a team in Alabama that just literally could care less to run the football. I mean, at this point, I'm amazed that Kalen DeBoer hasn't just came out 5 wide every snap.
They ran it for over 200 yards against Eastern Illinois, man.
They did. And there were a couple Thanksgivings ago where I truck stick my 6-year-old nephew, so I'm not really going to try out for the Colts yet. So, yes, they ran it against an FCS team. I'm not putting a whole lot of weight into that.
You truck stick your 6-year-old nephew at a Thanksgiving football game? What is wrong with you?
Bro, dude, you got to teach him ball. You got to learn at some point. No, but in all seriousness, I am actually fascinated that Alabama just hasn't decided to come out just I am fascinated by the fact that Alabama hasn't just elected to come out and just go 5 wide the entire football game.
Why? Because the running backs are there for pass pro.
Literally. I mean, at that point, I mean, just come out. I mean, it's wild to me. But
Sorry.
No, that was needed the laugh. But
yeah,
the interesting thing, I always talk about what's going to give. And Auburn has the number 11 ranked rush defense in the country, and Alabama has one of the worst rush offenses in the country. Alabama has one of the better, not the best, but one of the better pass offenses in the country, given skilled talent and how much they put into it schematically. Auburn ranks 100th in the country in pass defense.
Yeah.
So what takes the day here? What unit steps up? Is it going to be Alabama's rush offense, or is it going to be Auburn's pass defense? Whichever one of those units step up, I think that team wins. I really do. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be real interesting to watch on Saturday. But obviously, War Eagle this weekend.
Yeah. I'm very curious to see if the front four for Auburn can have a day. They're undersized, but they're really athletic on the edges.
Very quick hands.
I'm surprised. I'm disappointed how many of our Irish Breakdown members are absolutely on board with you. Ant VR, if you're going to play that alley, got to be ready to take a hit. Archer, all's fair between the lines. BD, Connor Laws, my younger cousins hate to see me coming to Thanksgiving dinner. Oh, man, that's great. You guys are awesome. Oh, that was such a remarkable comeback, Trevor. Yeah, well, I truck stick my 6-year-old nephew at Thanksgiving a couple Thanksgivings back. But it is true because it is embarrassing. Like Alabama, it was so it was like almost insulting. The committee says they don't run the ball, so you go out there and it's bad enough you're playing a 3-8 FCS team. Like Eastern Illinois sucks. I mean, they are terrible at football, which is crazy because they used to be really good. But that's a team that went 3-9 this year. Like you're Alabama and you're out there running all over that team when you're just completely unwilling to even try to run on anybody else. It's just like, come on, dude. You beat them 56-0 a week after Lindenwood beat them 42-12. You know what I mean? Like you're give me a break. Like
we're talking about
real quick.
We're talking about the same team, though, that after they beat South Carolina, their media team put out a thing that said that they beat like the number 13th ranked preseason team.
Yeah.
That was also just a crazy post.
Just ridiculous, man.
It's diabolical. Oh man.
This is not Nick Saban's Alabama, that's for sure. But I will absolutely be rooting for Auburn to win this football game.
Absolutely. No. Well, folks, that is going to do it for part 3 of today's show. We are going to wrap up today's show by previewing 3 games that are happening on Friday, and then Vince and Brian on Friday will preview some of the games on Saturday. But before we get there, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell, share this podcast with your friends and family, whatever streaming platform you listen to us on. We would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, best way to support what we do here, subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, to wrap up today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, we're going to be talking about 3 games that are happening on Friday. It's the start of rivalry weekend, and we got some heavy hitters coming over the next couple of days that we are going to talk about and preview. And this is, before we dive into the games, Brian, this is one of my favorite weekends of football season.
It really is.
I mean, because I'm a big proponent, and some people may disagree, and I understand that. Some of it's vicinity, what you grew up watching. I think college football is better than the NFL. I think it's better product.
Agree.
I think the culture around college sports, specifically football, is better. And this is one of the weekends that highlights it. There's a rivalry called good old-fashioned hate. And that's fantastic. You get Georgia Tech. You get Ohio State, Michigan. You get the Iron Bowl. You get rivalries like that. And so this is one of my favorite weekends to talk about. I'm happy that we get to preview some of these games that are going on Friday. But, Brian, I'm sure if you're anything like me, this is another just really just fun weekend above all else.
It really is. I love rivalry weekend, and this is why I continue to get pissed off at USC, because we only get to experience it every other year, and now they don't even want to do that. So, you can kiss my you-know-whats. But, I look at it, Trevor, and this is a great weekend. And it's, there's a lot of games we could talk about. We're going to look at 3 of them here today that are kind of the ones that are going to have the biggest impact on the, potentially on the playoffs. You could throw an Alabama, Auburn into the conversation. You could throw, Oregon, Washington, but we're going to do Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Georgia Tech, Texas A&M at Texas. And they all have very different names. Good old-fashioned hate is going to be the second game we talk about, but this first one is the Egg Bowl, and this is one of my favorite games. Trevor, I don't know what it is. I've always liked watching the Egg Bowl. It seems like there's always a lot of games, a lot of good games that they talk about. Now, just for the record, people, during Friday's show, Vince and I are going to go live at noon on Friday. We're going to preview all the Saturday games this Friday. So today, we're just looking at the 3 Friday games that we could look at. So, we'll have some other games that Vince and I will talk about, but we're going to look at the Friday games now. And this game is always one because it's the day after Thanksgiving. I feel like it's been played on Thanksgiving in the past. I feel like
I remember
eating some turkey, and then the Egg Bowl being on a Thursday, but it's a Friday this year. And I like this one. I think it's a big game. I think it's a very interesting matchup in a lot of different ways. Ole Miss is playing. I mean, look, for Ole Miss, you win and you're probably in the playoffs. Even if Lane Kiffin leaves, we talked about this last night. I don't know that the committee is going to have the you-know-whats to drop them completely out. I don't. I really don't know if they're going to be able to do that. And So you're trying to clinch your playoff berth. You're coming off of a gritty win over Florida this past weekend. Mississippi State is, lost 6 out of 7, but they've been competitive in a lot of games. Missouri, but their last 2 games they got blown out. I mean, they were played with Tennessee tough. They almost beat Florida. They almost beat Texas. They beat Arkansas on the road. But then the last couple games, they've got whooped pretty good by Georgia and Missouri. Where are they at mentally in this game? And it's a rivalry that Ole Miss has dominated. They've won 66 games. Mississippi State's won 46. They've tied. There's also a game with a lot of vacated wins, so Mississippi State had to vacate the win in 2018. Ole Miss had to vacate the wins in 2012 and 2014. So it's actually 68 to 47 to 6. Ole Miss has won the last 2. They were relatively competitive games. Mississippi State won in 2022. What was the year? I think it was a Mississippi State player, or was it an Ole Miss player where they scored or something? They did something good in the Ole Miss player. Yeah, it was an Ole Miss player. He lifted his leg like he was a dog peeing on something.
I think
they got flagged. I think then they end up losing that game or something crazy like that. Like it's a wild rivalry.
That was one of DK Metcalf or AJ Brown. I think it might have been DK Metcalf.
Yeah, I'm actually going to look that up. It was Elijah Moore is who it was, and who's a big time player. Yeah, it was 2000. It was 2019, and I'm trying to remember this, but I believe that penalty resulted in something happening where I think Mississippi State ended up winning that game, and that played a role in it. So it was now DK might have done that as well, but the one I'm talking about is the one from 19 that ended up costing Ole Miss the game.
He did it in 17. That's what I was thinking of. He did it in 2017 because it's the Mississippi State Bulldogs, and
Yes, this is the one. He did it in the end zone, and this is it. So the drew a 15-yard unsportsmanlike conduct penalty and pushed the extra point attempt back. Kicker Luke Logan missed the 35-yard attempt wide right, and Ole Miss lost 21-20. That's the one I'm talking about. Wow. But dude, it's one of those rivalries. Like Georgia Tech, they can steal the phrase "good old fashioned hate," but this is one where I feel like that is absolutely true. But here's the question, Trevor. Can Ole Miss put all the drama of their head coach aside and focus in on this game? And can Mississippi State, this is the 2 question marks facing each team, can Mississippi State shake off the last 2 beatdowns enough to get back to playing the way they were before when they were going toe-to-toe with a lot of teams? I think which team answers that question the best is ultimately going to be the one that wins this football game.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. This is one of those rivalries where we sit down and we talk about to put the records aside. There's a lot of drama. I feel like there's always some sort of off-field drama feeding into this game as well. I know this year it's been heightened because of the Lane Kiffin talk, but I just feel like every single year it's whether it's, players' comments before the game, the dog peeing celebration, there's always something that adds into this, the magnitude of it. Again, it's why I love college football rivalries, but this is a really, really interesting matchup. When we start getting into the what's at stake conversation, Mississippi State started out the year off extremely promising. They upset Arizona State when they came in week 2. They beat them 24-20. As they should have. They decimated Alcorn State 63-0. They beat Northern Illinois 38-10 at home, which I hold in high regard. But in all seriousness, they started out the season 4-0. Unfortunately, once they got into SEC play, they were competitive in some outings. It just didn't look.
Real quick, Trev. They pounded Southern Miss pretty good too, and Southern Miss is a 7-4 football team who's had some good wins this season. So that's also counts as a quality win for me. And they won 34-17.
And they did it on the road, beat Southern Miss on the road. So absolutely agree with you there. Unfortunately, once they got into SEC play, the Mississippi State from last season kind of reared its ugly head overall. They were a little bit more competitive, though, in some of those games. They lost to Tennessee by a touchdown at home. Texas A&M handled them pretty well. They were very competitive on the road in the Swamp against Florida. They only lost to Texas by a touchdown. They beat Arkansas by 3 on the road. But to your point, in the last 2, it's been a little bit rough for the Bulldogs. So, and then for Ole Miss, Go ahead.
About that, though, real quick, too, is part of the reason that Mississippi State has struggled the last 2 games is Blake Shapen has struggled throwing the football. And he went 10 of 15 for 86 yards against Georgia. He went 19 of 33 for only 199 yards against Missouri. No touchdowns, 2 picks. When they were playing well, so like when they almost beat Florida and should have beat Florida, that was a tough one. And then when they almost beat Texas and when they almost beat Arkansas, he went for 324, 281, 242. He averaged at least 8.6 yards per attempt in each game, had 6 touchdowns and 2 picks. That against Arizona State, 19 to 33 for 279 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Like when he plays well, when he can throw the football, they are dangerous. When he can't, that's when they struggle. And that's going to be my question mark, because you're going against an Ole Miss defense that's been at times shaky against the throwing game. That's why Arkansas was in that game, threw all over Ole Miss. Georgia threw all over Ole Miss, especially in the second half. Heck, even Oklahoma passed for over 200 yards against Ole Miss. And I mean, if you look at Oklahoma, that's the most passing yards they've had since playing Auburn back in September. So there's, that's where they're vulnerable. But with Ole Miss, they can be good at it, but sometimes they're not. And that's going to be a big part of this game is can Blake Shapen have a day? They're going to need him on the Mississippi State side. He's going to have to be a focal point and in this game for them offensively.
Yeah, agreed completely. And then you look at this, what this means for Ole Miss. Look, they're on the verge of a playoff berth. I mean, they're the 7th ranked team in the country. Now you have all of this drama going on with your head coach. Is he staying? Is he leaving? They're going to get that answer after the game, which I think is crazy, which, I mean, that all signs kind of point to me that means he's leaving. Not a whole lot of people, unless you're Jordan Belfort and Wolf of Wall Street, want to announce that you're staying. So this is going to be really interesting to see how they overcome this. Again, it's the off the field stuff. It's the drama that plays into these factors. Now, if we're talking about this matchup strictly from a football standpoint, I like Ole Miss in this game. Trinidad Chambliss has been balling out. Mississippi State has kind of struggled to stop the run in times so far this year. They're going up against one of the best running backs in the SEC. So from a matchup perspective, I see it being high scoring. I understand why FanDuel has the over-under set at 62.5. So I understand it, why it is the way it is. And if this was just about the football teams, I like Ole Miss in this one. But all the drama makes it a little bit more interesting, Brian.
You want to talk about why Mississippi State struggled in the last 2 games? Part of it's what I already pointed to. Their pass offense has struggled. The last 3 games, a 38-35 win over Arkansas and then the 2 blowout losses to Georgia and Ole Miss, they've given up 289.3 rushing yards per game, Mississippi State has, in their last 3 games. And you're going against a team in Ole Miss that likes to run the football. And a team in Ole Miss that they've got, obviously you mentioned Kawan Lacey, but Trinidad Chambliss is a threat as a runner. This is an Ole Miss team that has run for over 200 yards in 2 of their last 3 games. So their run game's starting to find that groove. And that's the thing for Ole Miss is they're very inconsistent running the football. Some weeks they look great running the ball. Other weeks they don't look very good running the football. I mentioned how they've been over 200 yards in 2 of their last 3 games. They only went for $151 against the Citadel, in a blowout win. And they were about, I think they were, let me look it up. I think they were less than 5 yards a carry. They were, 4.3 yards a carry against the Citadel. They went for 2.83 yards per carry against Oklahoma, only 3.7 yards per carry against Georgia. You only went for 2.95 yards per carry against Arkansas. So they've been very inconsistent. And that's a Lane Kiffin coach team. You're just not going to get consistency from Ole Miss. What they have done consistently is find ways to win. And that's what has made this team different than last year's team. Last year's team was a more talented but less mature, and just less grit. Last year's team, I don't know that you come back from 2 scores down and beat Kentucky. I don't know that you find ways to win and force that turnover at the end of the game with Arkansas driving for the game-winning touchdown. I don't know that you hold off and beat LSU at the end of the game. I think those are games. I don't know that you come, but once Oklahoma got that big run for a score, that's a moment where Ole Miss in the past would have kind of folded. This team didn't. And so if he ever had a team that was built to withstand all the noise, I think it's this one. I do. And that's why I do like Ole Miss in this football game. I think that Mississippi State, if their offensive line can give Blake shape and time, I do think they can make this an entertaining game. I do think they could help make this a game where we see a little bit of the over on this game. But what's interesting is the last few games have been lower scoring. Last year was 26-14. Year before that, 17-7. Year before that, 2020, 24-22. Although I think it was 2 years ago where it was like super low scoring because of the weather. I think it was 2 years ago. It was like terrible.
Yeah, it was
weather.
17-7. It was gross.
Yeah. So I think Ole Miss has a team that's built to kind of withstand the noise more so than past teams. And that's why I like Ole Miss in this game. But if we're wrong on that, I do think it's key. And look, we talk a lot about this in the past with Notre Dame, and every game in the past, like every game for 2 years, not even in the past, we talk about this with Notre Dame every week. It's you got to start fast. And I think that's going to be a big key for Mississippi State. They've got to come out playing well early. They got to make this a game early. I think if this is a game at halftime, I think they'll have a shot to win this game in the second half. I do. I think, but unfortunately, I think for them, this could be a game where by halftime, it's like you've got a decent, deficit that you've got to overcome. So, what's your score, Trev?
I have Ole Miss in this one. I have Ole Miss winning this one 24-17. I think it's going to be close for a little bit of time. I just think that Mississippi State's not going to be able to stop Ole Miss's ground attack. Just like we talk about Jeremiah Love making a final push for the Heisman, this is also Kawan Lacey's last opportunity, most likely, to make a push for the Doak Walker. And he's one of the best running backs in the SEC. And I think that rushing attack combined with Trinidad Chambliss's legs, he's another player that not a lot of people talk about his experience in big moments in bigger games. I mean, he won 2 Division II national titles, I think Trinidad Chambliss did. So to your point about, teams being able to block out the noise and what that looks like, I think that Trinidad Chambliss is going to be one of the leaders of that. I like Ole Miss in this one, 24-17. What was your score prediction?
Mine's 34-24, so I do think there'll be a little bit more points. I think it'll be a relatively close game early. I think late second quarter, maybe third quarter, Ole Miss's ground game starts to kind of gash Mississippi State. They hit a couple shots, and then you're going to see them pull away. So yeah, I got 34-24.
I like it.
Ole Miss.
I like it. Next game that we're talking about here, Brian, number 4, Georgia is on the road against number 23, Georgia Tech, in just a clean, old-fashioned hate rivalry. Kickoff is at 3:30 p.m. on ABC, and like we talked about, the Bulldogs are favored by 13.5. The over-under is set at 59.5.
What are your thoughts on this game, Trev?
Yeah, this one's interesting, especially after last year. I mean, Georgia's dominated this rivalry.
My wife, the graphic designer, just made a graphic that fits Trevor's Thanksgiving opponents. Family Thanksgiving opponents. Look at the fear in those kids' eyes. Oh, goodness gracious. Oh, that was good. Okay, Georgia Tech. Let's go. Let's get on it.
Yeah, this is one of those games, Brian, where Georgia Tech, despite some people maybe not thinking that they would, they're a little bit more competitive in this rivalry, even despite some of the other. I mean, Georgia has dominated this rivalry. They have 72 wins compared to Georgia Tech's 41. A lot of Georgia Tech's wins in this one have came from 1943 to 1974. Since then, it's been a lot of Georgia. But last year it was 44-42. The year before that, it was 31-23, and that was in Atlanta at a neutral site game. During some of their national championship years, Georgia dominated this one. But this one, especially given what last year was and when Brent Key took over for Georgia Tech, I think that makes it a little bit more interesting. So, yeah, it's one that I'm not going to predict Georgia Tech to win. I do think it could be a little bit closer than what some might think early, but yeah, this one's going to be interesting.
Yeah, so from 17, the beginning of Georgia's run, so their first title game run, the one they lost to Bama, they won that game by 31, then they blew them out in 18, 19, 21. They won 45-0. And in the last 3 years, it's been a lot closer, 22, 23, and 24. It's been a lot more competitive. The game in 22 was competitive early. Georgia pulled away late, 37-14. But if you remember, it was like halftime. It was actually, let me pull up the box score for that one because I'm pretty sure. So Georgia Tech, Georgia box score 2022. I believe that game was, it was 10-7 at halftime. And then Georgia outscored them 27-7 in the second half. And in the last 2 years, the game has been very competitive. And then obviously Georgia Tech had a great shot to win last year, blew a 17-point lead. I think this is an interest. I mean, if you're Georgia Tech, what are you playing for at this point in time? You know what I mean? Like what's on the line? Are you going to be in the ACC title game? Are you not going to? I mean, I think they're out of the ACC title game now, right? Aren't they out? So you kind of blew that. I don't know what exactly you're playing for at this point in time. You didn't show up to play at home last week against Pitt. You were down 28-0 to Pitt last week. You choked that one away. So there's two ways of looking at it. One is they're just not going to be locked in and the motivation is gone. Or two is like, okay, now they're pissed off and, okay, if our season's ruined, we're going to try to ruin Georgia's and we're going to try to get that big win. I don't know what the answer is. And it's going to be very interesting to see how Brent Key can get his team to rebound from what was a crushing loss last week. And crushing because it knocked you out of the ACC title game, crushing because you got whooped, you put all that energy into coming back, you get it within a touchdown, and then boom, right down the field and they score again. So, not exactly the greatest way to end your conference play. And if you're Georgia, I mean, you're kind of, there's nothing you can do right now to help your SEC title hopes, but you've got a lot still on the line when it comes to your college football playoff rankings because you're not locked in no matter what happens on this Saturday. You've got to win to make sure that you're locked in. Whether or not Georgia wins or loses the SEC title game, if they even make it, is not going to knock them out of the playoff if they handle business on Saturday. So this to me is a playoff clinching game for Georgia Tech. Now, are they going to be locked in and come out and play the way they have the last few weeks? That's going to be a great question because if you're Kirby Smart, you're trying to kind of look at this the same way that we talk about Notre Dame is you want to go into the playoffs riding a high. And Georgia is without a doubt or playing their best football the last few weeks against quality teams. I don't even look at last week's game. Charlotte's so bad. They played great against Texas. They absolutely pounded Mississippi State. We're up and down against Florida. Didn't look great against Auburn. Had to come back to beat Ole Miss. We've had a lot of questions about Georgia, but they're down the stretch. They're playing their best football. Is that just kind of worked out that way against Texas and Mississippi State, or is that who Georgia is? We're gonna find that out. My question is, Georgia I still have questions about Georgia's run defense. And obviously Georgia can run the football. I mean, Georgia Tech can run the football. I think Georgia's rush defense statistically looks very good. Very good, but I still think they can be had by some teams that can run the football. They just haven't played a whole lot of teams that run the football really well, or at least really consistently. And I thought Mississippi State had some success, but they completely shut down Texas's run game. They shut down Ole Miss's run game. So I have some questions about that. There aren't a lot of good rushing teams, and Georgia Tech has a good rushing team, especially good rushing quarterback. But at the end of the day, the best way to really beat Georgia is be able to throw the football. And I don't know that Georgia Tech throws the football well enough to do enough damage in this game. I don't think they have the weapons, and they don't use – well, let me rephrase. They're not using the weapons the way that they did last year. I've been very disappointed with the job that Buster Faulkner's done using all of his weapons this year, especially Jamal Haynes at running back. They've won because they've played a lot of bad teams. Simple as that. And we said that. We said that's why we picked Pitt to win last week. You and I both thought Pitt would win that game. We didn't do an official ranking, but that's why you and I both thought Pitt was going to win that game. I have not been impressed with Georgia Tech for a while. I just don't know if that automatically goes away just because you're motivated to play your rival. I think this is a bad matchup for Georgia Tech, much worse than last year.
Yeah, I do too. You and I see this very much the same. And also, I mean, if we're going to talk about, rivalry and all that stuff, there's a good amount of Georgia players on that roster that also remember being taken into 8 overtimes on their own home field in this rivalry as well. So I think Georgia's going to want to look to try to reestablish some level of dominance in this one. I just don't like this matchup at all for Georgia Tech. I don't. I mean, to be able to beat Georgia, you have to make plays in the pass game, and that's something that Haynes King has been able to make plays in the pass game so far this season, but it's been after they're down by 20 points. It's when the game is well in doubt that he has to go and make plays in the pass game, and that's what we saw against Pitt. But unlike Pitt, I don't see Kirby Smart taking his foot off the gas in this one and allowing it to become a 42-35 game at some point or whatever it was, or what it was like 35-28, I think at one point. I don't see Kirby Smart making the same mistake that Pat Narduzzi did. I have Georgia winning this one big. I have Georgia winning this one 30. Oh gosh, what did I have? 34-17, but like never that close.
38-21. We have the same exact margin, just 4 points off. Yeah, I think Georgia Tech can score 3 touchdowns on Georgia. I just don't think they can stop the Bulldogs offense.
Yeah.
Yep,
100%. Last game, folks, that we're going to take a deep dive preview in. Number 3 Texas A&M is on the road against the number 16 Texas Longhorns in the Lone Star Showdown. 7:30 p.m. kickoff on ABC. The Aggies, even though they are on the road, are favored by -2.5 points, and the over/under is set at 51.5. And Brian, I know that this is a rivalry that you and I are both happy that came back after Texas joined the SEC. So it's good to see this battle for the Lone Star State.
I'm so happy to see this rivalry back, and I'm so happy to see it at the end of the year. I am. I loved this rivalry as a kid. This was a Thanksgiving tradition for me, was watching Friday. I still remember when Ricky Williams basically locked in the Heisman by going off on Texas A&M on the Friday after Thanksgiving. Like, I still remember that as a kid. I think that was, gosh, that would have been when you were what was that, 98? What year did Ricky Williams win the Heisman Trophy? I'd have been like, you were a baby, I think, when that one went down, Trevor. But what year? Ricky Williams Heisman. What year was that? That was 1998. Yeah, I was right. Hey, go me. So, yeah, I look at it like this, dude. I think this is a heck of a matchup between two good football teams. I do think this is one of those ones where you kind of got to, the record only means so much. There's a lot of animosity in these games. There's intriguing matchups between these two teams. Obviously, I think Texas is far more battle tested. A&M is a little bit more balanced. They can run, they can throw. They're solid on defense. And Texas has a better defense usually, but at the same time, Texas's offense has kind of struggled against some of the better teams that they've played. So this is a great matchup. And if you're Texas, you still have a small glimmer of hope that you can make the college football playoff. But you're going to need to win this game in order to make that happen. Right? Small glimmer of hope. And but beating A&M is the only hope that you have to do it. I don't think Texas is in, but they're not eliminated. Where they're ranked, what were they, 16th last night?
Yes, sir.
There's enough chaos that could happen, unlikely as it is, for them to jump in. And beating the number 3 team in the country is the beginning of that.
Step one. That's definitely step one in the process. But like you said, a lot of interesting matchups in this game. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, their run game got absolutely shut down by Georgia. But Texas A&M is also not known this season for their rush defense, in my opinion. Going to be very, very interested to see, again, I talk about it all the time, what takes the day. Is Steve Sarkisian in a big game going to be willing to run the football and commit to running the football? Or with Arch coming off of like a 6-touchdown game, is it going to be one of those where it's like, all right, let's just air it out on this Texas A&M defense? I don't think Texas A&M's defense is as good as what a lot of people talk about. I mean, we talked about this earlier in the season. I mean, I'm gonna pull it up now to see what the actual numbers are. Their offense travels. I am not worried about Texas A&M to put numbers up in this game. I mean, on the road this season, They scored 38 against Missouri, 49 against LSU, 45 against Arkansas, and then 41 against Notre Dame. Not worried at all about their defense or their offense. Now, their offense is a different
They're the number 2
question.
scoring team in the country away from home at 43.3 points per game. The only team higher than them is Texas A&M. Is North Texas.
Now
make your next point, because I got that one too.
On the road, their defense has not traveled well. They gave up 40 points to Notre Dame. They gave up 42 to Arkansas. They gave up 25 to LSU, but LSU scored a garbage time touchdown after starters were pulled.
Right.
I will say that. So it's not as bad as like big picture 25 points. So, but still.
That's also a bad offense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
they are 88th in college football this year at 31 points per game in games away from home. By the way, Notre Dame is 5th in scoring defense away from home. Ohio State's 1, Clemson's 2, Oregon's 3, Oklahoma's 4. And they are they're at 16.3. Number 2, Clemson is at 15.8. Ohio State's at 8.1. And then Notre Dame is number 7 in scoring offense away from home. I just thought that was interesting. But this is an A&M Texas conversation.
It's still, I mean, that leaves for a very interesting matchup. I mean, especially given what Texas's offense has done really the last couple of weeks, because they've also really impressed me. I mean, they put up 52 on Arkansas. I hesitate to say like overall completely, because like their offense got completely shut down by Georgia on the road. And again, this isn't the same Georgia defense that it was a couple seasons ago or even last season, arguably, but still put up 52 points at home against Arkansas. They scored 34 against Vanderbilt, 45 against Mississippi State on the road. But then before that, like, bleh. So what version of Texas's offense are we going to see in this game? Are we going to see the Georgia version, the Oklahoma version, the Florida version, or are we going to see the Arkansas version, the Vanderbilt version, the Mississippi State version? Very, very interesting to see in this one. Very interesting.
Yep. I honestly don't know what to make of this game, Trevor. Honestly, I think the South Carolina game in a lot of ways was the best thing to happen to Texas A&M coming into this matchup. I really do. I think, they played an LSU team that was just on the verge of collapsing. They beat a Missouri team that was still in the early stages of not having their quarterback. And, they're going to play a struggling South Carolina team. They got Stanford. They would not have been tested. I think falling behind 30-3 was kind of a wake-up call that I think this team needed a little bit to kind of figure some stuff out. Their defense played way better in the second half of that game. Does that translate to this game? That I don't know. But the thing about Texas A&M that makes me very interested in this game, Trevor, is like you look at where they are defensively and the things that they struggle with. They're a pretty good rush defense on the season. They've been a pretty good rush defense. They did give up some yards to Arkansas, and Ahmed Hardy had a couple big gains, but for the most part, they've been pretty good against the run. They've held 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of their opponents to under 100 yards. And their pass defense has been pretty good at times as well, but I think their pass defense is the one that's been the most vulnerable at times because I don't think they're quite as good there. Texas's pass offense has been kind of up and down, and a lot of it comes down to can they establish the run game? If you're Texas, you can't just come out there and drop back and throw it all day against a team like Texas A&M because LSU learned that. Now, Texas has a better offensive line than LSU, but not by a ton better. And they just tried to drop back and throw it all day, and Cassius Howell and the D-line just eventually figured it out, pinned their ears back, and went after him. And so, like, this is a similar kind of matchup, in my opinion, although I think Texas is a much better offense than LSU was clearly overall. But the one-dimensional aspect is kind of the thing that's going to have to be key here. When Texas's offense kind of is at its best, they have some semblance of balance. I'm not saying they're going to run the ball a ton, but they have some semblance of balance. You have to have something. They only ran the ball for 100 yards against Vanderbilt, but they had some solid, runs early on. But what they did in that game is they ran a ton of perimeter screens that basically served as an extension of their run game, and their receivers were able to make people miss. I don't know that you can replicate that every week, Trevor, and that's why I think they tried to do that stuff against Georgia and got ate up. So great, it worked against Arkansas. Everybody's all fired up about what they did against Arkansas. I just find it hilarious that when Notre Dame goes out there and annihilates Arkansas, they suck. But when Texas does it a week after getting blown out by Georgia, it's Texas is back, baby. You know what I mean? It's like, can you guys just at least be somewhat consistent with, like, kind of what you're trying to figure out? But, I mean, Texas had 490 yards against Arkansas. Great. Notre Dame had 641. Like, you also gave up 37 points to Arkansas. And that's kind of my bigger concern. You gave up 512 yards to Arkansas. And with all due respect to Arkansas, they're not Texas A&M. So I'm a little concerned about Texas's defense in this game. I think Texas's offense has a shot to score some points because this is a solid A&M defense, but it's not a great A&M defense. To your point, Trevor, they've given up points at times this year. My concern is more so the Texas offense. Yeah, they moved the ball, played great against Vandy. Vandy's defense is bad. It is not a good defense. I mean, we've pointed that out. Let's pull up those numbers that we were talking about that the committee looks at. You want to know why Vandy keeps getting passed up? It's this right here. Look at those defensive numbers down there for Vandy. That is not good. That's why the committee doesn't respect Vandy. Yes, their offense is really good. It's that defense down there that's the problem. The committee does not like one-dimensional teams, and Vanderbilt is very much a one-dimensional team. That's the problem also with Texas. They're a very one-dimensional team. And I don't know that a one-dimensional team can beat Texas A&M the way that they're going to need to in order to win this game. That's the concern, because I don't think this is going to be a low-scoring game. It's not going to be like last year where they won, 17-7? If you're going to win this game, you're going to have to get over 30. Can Texas do that playing one-dimensional football? And then in Arch not turn the ball over? Like that's kind of my question in this game, Trevor, because Texas A&M's defense, it's kind of wild. They don't force interceptions. They've only forced 3 interceptions on the year. That's it, 3.
No kidding.
One of them was against Notre Dame, yeah. But they can harass the quarterback. They can get after the quarterback. Arch is kind of at times prone to turn the ball over and he gets pressured. He'll at least miss. Can the pass rush affect the game? And that's what I love. I mean, I'm back and forth like, okay, this favors A&M. This is good for Texas. But at the end of the day, I just don't think you can be one-dimensional and beat Texas A&M. I don't think you can throw enough to outscore them. You're going to have to figure out a way to at least get something going in the run game. Because everybody's talking about Bama and their lack of run game. Texas has got the same problem, Trevor. I mean, their running game this year has been brutal. They're averaging 121 yards a game. They've been held less than they have since SEC play started. They've rushed for over 100 yards once. That was 136 yards against Oklahoma. They had 100 yards against Vandy. They've had 52 against Florida, 47 against Kentucky, 72 against Mississippi State, 23 against Georgia, 97 against Arkansas. I don't think you can beat Texas A&M doing that. I don't care where the game's being played.
No, I'm with you. The biggest wild card in this one to me is Marcel Reed and his legs. I mean, Texas has played a handful of mobile quarterbacks this season and has given up rushing touchdowns to all of them, except John Mateer, which I thought was relatively interesting. But against Arkansas, they gave up rushing touchdowns to both of the quarterbacks they played. KJ Jackson had to come in after Taylon Green sat out with a hamstring injury. And KJ Jackson came in and balled. He went 16-29 for 206 yards, 1 passing touchdown. Then he rushed 4 times for 17 yards and a touchdown. Taylon Green had 56 yards and a rushing touchdown. When they played against Georgia, Gunnar Stockton had 29 and a rushing touchdown. When they played Diego Pavia, he had 43 and a rushing touchdown. And Marcel Reed, you could argue, is the most dynamic runner of the 4. And so I think that's a wild card in this game. If Marcel Reed is able to start making plays off schedule, making plays with his legs, making plays off script, that's going to be a tough one it's going to be a really, really tough game for Texas to win. So, and that kind of feeds into my prediction, Brian, is I just think that Texas A&M, sometimes I'm not going to call them like the team of destiny, but sometimes when a team is rolling and they're just rolling, sometimes teams are just hard to beat. And I think that's Texas A&M right now. I think Notre Dame should have beat them. I think South Carolina should have beat them. And they just refuse to lose. And that's a cultural thing with Mike Elko at the helm. Texas, on the other hand, they've been very, very hit or miss this season. Very hit or miss. And that's really hard for me to predict a team to win a game, especially an upset game over a top 5 opponent, when you're just that much. Because look, I'll concede this. At their peak, when they look really good, Texas does look really good. But when you start looking at when those moments happen and it's not against good teams, and the moments where they do play good teams and they just look like a completely different ball club, I don't
Trev,
think
they've only looked good against 2 teams this year, and offensively, and one of them was Sam Houston State, and the other one was three Mississippi State and Vanderbilt. They had to come way behind against Mississippi State. Vanderbilt, they scored 34 points. Vanderbilt's defense is average at best.
Yeah.
They have not done anything on offense against any team that's got a solid defense. I mean, like all of Texas's success, to your point, has been against inferior opponents.
Yep.
Yet they beat Oklahoma. That was Mateer came back too early.
Yep.
That's not the same Oklahoma team. They needed a punt return for a touchdown to even put that game away the way that they did. That was a sloppy win. This isn't Oklahoma. A&M's offense is not Oklahoma's.
No.
You know, and now A&M doesn't have the defense that Georgia did. A&M doesn't have the defense that Oklahoma did, but their defense is better than Mississippi State and Vanderbilt. Their defense is kind of in between those teams. They're not as good as Georgia and Oklahoma. They're not nearly as bad as Mississippi State and Vanderbilt. They're kind of in between.
Yep.
The question for me, the bigger question for me is, this is the first game in a while that Texas A&M's playing in sort of a spotlight game. The last time was LSU, and that wasn't even really that much of a spotlight game. I think LSU was barely ranked at the time. And they did not play great early. They had some mistakes. They threw the interception in the end zone and then eventually took things over. You're going to have to be a little bit sharper than that early. It looked like early on they were going to roll LSU. I mean, that first drive of the game, they go right down the field, and then they had the turnover in the end zone. They gave up a couple big runs, and then they got sloppy, and then LSU kind of clawed back into that game and made that a much more competitive football game going into halftime, because it was like the halftime score was a little bit weird because you felt like Texas A&M was on the verge of blowing them out, but then they were losing 18-14 at halftime. You know what I mean? And then, of course, the second half looked like the game should have gone.
Yeah.
Well, Texas isn't LSU. They're better than LSU.
True.
And that's kind of my whole point. So,
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
It's a really good point. I'll give my prediction for this one. I do see a lot of scoring going on in this game. I really do. I have Texas A&M winning this one. I have them winning it 38-27. I don't have a lot of faith in this Texas offense, really in this Texas team. I think this is one of the more balanced and dynamic offenses that they faced. And in every major game that Texas has played in, they've just fallen short. They really have. Like, they did not look good in week 1 against Ohio State. They didn't look good in the swamp in Florida. And I'm not even saying that that's as high of a magnitude game as Ohio State. It's just, you playing Florida. It's another notable SEC team. They looked really bad against Georgia. Georgia could have scored more than 35 if they wanted to in that game. Georgia allowed the score to be 35-10.
Yep.
Whereas Texas A&M, like I said, there's something about some teams just kind of refuse to lose. And I think that's kind of them right now. All things, like, I would not have believed you if you would have told me how that Texas A&M game would have played out. Especially, Notre Dame's going down and scoring, and then like the extra point thing was weird. Their defense giving up that long drive at the end. I like Texas A&M in this one. And some of it is for their skilled talent on the perimeter. Like, Texas's pass defense is just not good. Like, they have names, but people just assume that Texas has a good defense for what they were last year. I think Casey Concepcion, I think Mario Craver, I think some of those guys have a good day, and the balanced attack from Marcel Reed is going to give this defense some fits. So I like Texas A&M in this one, 38-27.
I don't love the Texas secondary. I don't. I have not been as high on them this year, Trevor. I think that this is where an area where they're going to be vulnerable. I think Marcel Reed's going to hit some big plays. I think his legs are going to have an impact, and I like A&M in this game too. What did you say your score was?
38-27.
38-27. I'm going 34-27. I think Texas gets a late score and makes it closer. That's where I'm at.
I like it. And just to put some numbers behind what we're talking about, Texas in yards per game ranks 107th in pass defense this season. 107th.
Say that again.
Texas in pass defense this year in terms of like yards per game allowed, they rank
Mm-hmm.
107th in the country.
Yeah, that's not good.
No, it's not. They've given up 16 passing touchdowns this year in terms of yards per game allowed. Like, it's just not. I mean, and we're talking about like Notre Dame's pass
That's
defense
with them holding
quite
Sam Houston State to 86.
Yeah. And that
They've
I
given
mean,
them over
that's
300 yards in 3 of their last 4 games.
Yep. So
yeah, I don't love that secondary. I don't. Now the key is they do have their pass rush at times, led by Colin Simmons, has been very good, but it's inconsistent. They're going to need that part of the game to dominate, but you're going against a pretty veteran Texas A&M offensive line that's been pretty good this year. So can Texas win this game? If A&M turns it over, Texas can win this game. And if Texas can you're going to have to hit a couple big plays and protect Arch, but I don't think that this Texas team is as good as people think it is. It's like every time they beat a decent team, it's like they're hyping up Arkansas, that 15-point win over Arkansas, and just ignoring the fact that they're only beat them by 43. It's very annoying.
I mean, I'll take it
what a great win. I'm like, guys, this team's 2-9. Whenever I try to point out the 43-point win, it's like, whoa, that team sucks. But now it's like Texas is back. We're going to ignore that a week before when they played a real team, they got destroyed. You know, like they needed overtime to beat Kentucky. They needed overtime to beat Mississippi State. And we're going to pretend like this Texas team is good because they pounded Arkansas and beat Vanderbilt by 3. Vanderbilt's not that good. They're a good top 25 team. They're not a top 15 team because their defense is not even a top 50 defense.
Yep.
Which is why they have not beat anybody that's ranked this year. And if Bo Perbula doesn't get injured against Missouri, I don't think they beat Missouri either. Because they couldn't score on Missouri. But Missouri just couldn't do anything offensively once Bo Perbula went down.
It's a good point.
So
it's a very good
don't
point.
see it.
Well, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown podcast. I know it's Thanksgiving weekend, and I know a lot of people are going to be traveling here in the next 24 hours. So make sure you drive safe, enjoy the time spent with families. I will see you guys again on Saturday during the live show. Don't forget, Irish Breakdown is going live during the Stanford game, probably about 30 minutes before, to do a little bit of a pregame show. Then we're also going to be doing a little abbreviated postgame show once that is over. You're going to see Brian and Vince on Friday when they're going to get together and they're going to preview the Saturday games. They're going to be going live at noon. All the more reason to be subscribed to this channel and have that notification bell hit so you know when they go live on Friday. And then, like I said, live show on Saturday. Not going to want to miss that one. On your way out of here, folks.
Start at 10 on Saturday night, by the way. Just a reminder, we'll start at 10.
Love it. 10 p.m. is the next time I'll be with you guys. Appreciate all of the love and support that I got this week as well. It's been a rough one, and I appreciate being able to come here and just be able to sit down and talk ball with all of you guys. It's been fantastic. So on your way out of here, make sure you hit that like button. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. And as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Enjoy rivalry weekend. Until next time, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast.